It's time for Windows Weekly. I should warn you right from the start, there's no Hall & Oates in this show. There's just Paul and Richard, but they are in Seattle for Microsoft Build 2024, and boy, what a bunch of announcements. We'll start with the Surface PC announcements to talk about Copilot Plus PC, and then talk about, it's just a ton of stuff. New Windows, new everything. Coming up next on Windows Weekly. You don't want to miss this one.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 882, recorded Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. The Hall & Oates story. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft, and they are in Seattle, Washington for the big Build conference. Left Shark here, Richard Campbell from RunAs Radio.com. Right Shark, Paul Thurrott from Thurrott.com. And you're in the same physical space together. Is that uncomfortable at all for you?
No, it's nice. It's kind of fun, We've been bombing around at different locations in Seattle, and generally causing trouble, having a good time.
Yay!
There's a Mary Jo Foley around here somewhere.
No, she's in the air.
Oh, now. She's gone. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad. I was hoping she might peek her head through that curtain behind you.
That would be great.
I was going to ask her to actually, but
that would be fun.
A lot of people leaving today.
Yeah, which as soon as the keynote was over, basically.
So
I'm running a podcasting space here, and I know I'm losing a couple of my podcasters tomorrow morning too.
Yeah.
Microsoft kind of kicked things off with that Surface announcement on Monday. Build officially opened yesterday.
Yep.
Keynotes yesterday and today.
Mm-hmm.
And then what?
The Great Abyss.
Yeah, there's talks until the afternoon tomorrow, but it depends on what you want to go to, right?
Right.
Gaping maw of nothingness.
Yeah.
Just sessions.
Okay, so we can today at this event we call Windows Weekly summarize the totality of Build. Why don't we start at the beginning with Monday's Surface announcements and this new Copilot Plus PC. I note, by the way, that there's a space after plus, but not before it. So I'm thinking they pronounce it. You can tell me Copilot Plus PC.
PC, yeah.
Not Copilot
so
Plus PC.
That is one of the many confusions that we will discuss. Because, there's a lot of fog of war to this.
Yeah.
You wonder if the product is just Copilot Plus.
Are you sure the fog of war is not the Clonakilty? I mean, I'm just asking.
I haven't whiskeyed that hard this week yet.
I think Paul has.
I got out early last night.
Did you see the dive bar we ended up in last night?
No. Well, the tavern you started at, I left from there and went to write my piece.
Yeah. So a quarter. What's the word I'm looking for?
A block away.
A block. Thank you. We went to this little dive bar that was about as seedy as you could be. There was a shaman who walked in with a staff with a human skull on the top of it.
Oh my God.
And,
this is excellent.
Yeah, it got weird.
It's too bad. So you're drinking some thick blue liquor, that happened?
They, despite the look of this place, could make a paper plane.
Oh, okay.
Paper airplane, is that the right name?
The cocktail?
Yep.
So,
and Tatooine milk, it sounds like?
Yes. Yep. Anyway,
right.
It got weird.
And you ran into a funny looking guy with long hair, it looks like. I'm looking at your Insta here.
Yep.
That's not the wizard.
No, I didn't get a picture of the shaman. I was afraid. I didn't want to steal his soul.
This is clearly later in the evening.
Yeah.
Somebody's more enthusiastic about this photo than others.
He loved it. Be quiet.
That's former TWiT employee Alex Gumpel, who's now working in the TV station across from the Space Eagle.
He works. Yeah, we were right across the street almost from there, and up the street from his apartment. So
nice.
Yeah.
Funny. What I found was fascinating about the whole Copilot Plus PC is it's like they're afraid to say Windows on ARM.
Yeah.
Oh, did they not really mention that? Well, they mentioned the Snapdragon Elite, right?
They don't want people to think of it, right?
I guess so, because it has not gone well the previous times they've attempted
there's some bad vibes to it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. So in the history of Windows, obviously, there's been different ways to differentiate different versions and whatever. We've had product SKUs for a long time, NT Workstation, NT Server.
Yep.
Windows XP Home, Windows XP Professional, right? We still have Home and Pro today. We went off the rails for a while with many product additions for a few versions, but so there's that. We've also had these kind of specialty versions of Windows, right? Like Media Center Edition, Tablet PC, Ultra Mobile PC, whatever. So
Media Center.
Yeah. I mean, so Copilot Plus PC, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it just feels to me like they're trying to force ARM into existence. And so wrapping it in a Copilot blanket, they think it's going to be better.
It's also a strangely limiting way to roll out exciting new features because you have to. There's going to be a 24H2.
Yeah.
Actually, there's going to be two 24H2s, but let's not get too convoluted here.
Yet.
Yeah. And when you get a Copilot Plus PC, you will get 24H2 with additional Copilot Plus PC features that will never be made available to anyone else.
Right.
Which is, and this is why I'm still trying to reconcile this in my brain, but I guess I'm going to say my educated guess at this point is that this will play out like Media Center and Tablet PC, that in the beginning, you're going to have to buy a special kind of PC to get this stuff.
Right.
And then at some time,
it's going to be on everything.
Yeah, they'll just roll it into Windows.
And part of that's going to be the hardware is going to advance. So everybody's going to have that capability.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I'm just guessing because they're not going to talk about that.
Well, and like there's a question of could we get a Snapdragon on a motherboard and build a PC with it?
Oh, that is like I said, there are many questions.
Yeah.
That is absolutely one of them. So,
although not that Qualcomm has ever done socketed Snapdragon, it's always been SoC, like directly on the board.
Yep, this is a new world.
Yeah,
we don't know.
But the fact that Asus is making a machine gives me the possibility that Asus might make a motherboard.
Yeah, I don't know how these systems differentiate from each other internally, right? I think it was 8 or 9 of the top PC makers and Microsoft are all making their own computers based on this platform. Is there some common component to all of the motherboards that's, and then some additional stuff that some companies are doing and others aren't? We don't know yet, right? It just happened. We'll see. Anyway, this event was billed, or a lot of people expected this event to be a Surface event, basically. Obviously, it was kind of I guess we'll call it the Copilot Plus PC launch event. It was only Qualcomm, Intel, and AMD will eventually release chipsets that will allow PCs to be called Copilot Plus PCs. Basically.
So I guess the Ultra doesn't qualify?
It does not.
Interesting.
And, so the differentiator there, the problem for the Core Ultra is the NPU.
Right.
So the NPU has to deliver at least 40 TOPS to qualify. That one, I think, was it 13 TOPS, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah.
The Qualcomm current chipset is 45 TOPS. Intel has already said we will have a 40. Well, actually, we're going to.
This is not even a Moore's Law problem then. This is just a fabbing problem.
Yeah.
Make a better fab, you'll do good.
Yeah. So both AMD and Intel will deliver by the end of the year. We'll get to a bit of that in a moment. But for now, the first gen, the launch lineup is all Qualcomm based.
Right.
And it's pretty good support there, right? I mean, I think the first gen Qualcomm, maybe there were 2 PC makers at the launch. There was only one decent PC based on the most recent chipset to date,
right.
Which was Lenovo. I think that X13, I believe.
They did also mention the Snapdragon for devs. A little.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Mini PC unit. So that's exciting.
That thing's looking good.
Yeah, I think I'd like one of those.
I do too. That might become my office, my home office computer.
Yeah.
So just coming into this, I will say there was a lot of secrecy on Microsoft's part.
For some reason.
Well, I get it, but they provided the press with a bill of materials that did not include anything related to Windows at all, which was very notable. And then we showed up on Monday, and they kind of revealed it to a room full of people, which they did not live stream. So we were all allowed to kind of live tweet it or whatever we did.
Right.
And then they at the end of the event announced to the world what they had done. And then I think you can. Well, no, I know you can. You can go watch the video now if you want to see the event.
Right. And you've ordered one.
Yeah, I ordered one. I literally
you sent me the screenshot.
Yusuf Mehdi is up on stage and he says, and you can pre-order it now at Surface.com. Boop, boop, boop. Done.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were people who thought I was joking when I said I was going to order one of these as soon as I could, but
you weren't.
I was not joking. So the two Microsoft devices look good. I mean, they're as expected, right? No surprises there. The third-party PCs that they announced, vary in quality, I would say.
Yeah.
These are premium PCs, all of them. The base price is technically, I think, $999, but the cheapest one I'm aware of is an Acer Swift, which is $1050, I think, to start. Minimum specs 16 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage.
Not enough of either.
Yeah, and those are tied to the requirements of the onboard SLMs, of which there are up to 40. I know, it's just crazy. Yeah.
What's an SLM? What an onboard
small language model, the on-device.
Oh, it's the models. Okay.
Yeah, this is a weird thing. And then we'll get into some of the features, but one of the big ones, one of the controversial ones, also has its own pretty heady storage requirements. So this is part of the differentiation and probably part of the excuse/reason why they're not just giving it to everyone because of all reasons. Actually, I just remembered one. I have a little list of the people that Microsoft upset the other day, and I forgot one of them. I'll just add that to the notes. They upset everybody, but we'll get to that. Hour-long event, a bunch of AI features like we expected. The big question we had wanted to answer was, would this be enough to trigger a round of upgrades, the likes of which we've not seen?
Yeah, everybody needs to buy a new machine.
Yeah, and I'm going to say,
don't you think that's the goal?
It is the goal.
Yeah,
I don't think they met that bar personally.
They didn't show off software. They just gave a lot of promises.
Well, they showed off some features. This stuff is hard. I think you were the one who originally kind of said, AI is there's no killer app. There's a bunch of small things. And depending on your needs, depending on who you are, depending on the types of things you use a PC for, you might have seen something in that event where you're like, oh, I have to get this thing, right? And I think for people who are creatives, this might be of interest. Road Warriors, obviously, for the battery life.
Because there is just two things, right? There is the Copilot features, but it's also Windows on ARM, which is battery life, efficiency, quiet,
and a lack of drivers if you have anything esoteric.
Yeah, and what software will look from somebody asks you, you're going to do a .NET Rocks on Windows on ARM. It's like it's going to be a 2-minute show. It's like it runs. Thanks very much.
Years ago, well, it would have been 2017 or whatever they announced the first version of this for 10. I said, if this thing is successful, it will just be the most boring release in the history of mankind because it should just work. There should be no drama. I think they're mostly going to meet that bar, but there are always those people who have specialized devices of whatever kind.
Well, it's a great question when you talk about that device. It's just like, how do I print?
Yeah. Well, that stuff's all built in. The basics, right?
Yeah.
Which should meet most people's needs. But if you have a crazy 3D printer with specific software or whatever it might be.
Hell, it's the scanner.
Yeah.
There's any number of things where you're going to bump into some issues.
Yeah. Yep. But they're shooting for the mainstream with the first version, and I think it's there for that audience. I actually do believe that the efficiency stuff, battery life, the relative silence, we're going to get to that, will really appeal to people. That people have maybe looked over at the MacBook Air a little bit and said, I kind of like some of the stuff that's going on there. I'd like that in Windows maybe.
One of the things the MacBreak Weekly team pointed out is these do have fans. I mean, how quiet are they?
Yeah. So I have good news there. I mean, the bad news is, they have fans. By the way, they all have fans. This is 100% across the board.
Yeah.
It's a personal embarrassment to me that I never thought to ask Qualcomm or anybody about this, not just yesterday, but before yesterday. I spent 5 hours in a room.
The Airs that they're emulating have no fans, so they really are silent. They don't get hot either.
Yeah. So here's the thing. The good news is Ryan Shrout, who formerly of Intel, who is now a partner in a kind of an analyst firm, was commissioned by Microsoft to discover what was really going on with these computers and compare them to its predecessor. I'm sorry, they used a Surface laptop for the tests. Compared it to the previous gen Surface laptop and also to the MacBook Air M3. And I've known Ryan forever. I trust him as much as you can trust any human being. He's reliable. This thing either kicked the crap out of or basically broke even with the MacBook Air on everything. Almost everything. The one weird one was using Chrome, the web browser native version, was more efficient on the Mac, but I think part of that has to do with it's been around for a long time, and the Windows version is not. And also, this falls into that category we had talked about before, where it doesn't have to actually beat the thing; it just has to kind of play the game, be in the ballpark,
right?
And it is in the ballpark. Like no one's going to sit there and look at Chrome back and forth and say, "Wow, it's loading those web pages 0.001 seconds."
Oh, somebody faster. Will, but we're just going to ignore them because they're silly.
That's not. Look, people buy people are shopping for Mac OS or Windows.
Yeah.
It's not. Okay. And then they say, okay, well, I'm a Mac guy. What hardware is there? I'm a PC guy. What hardware is there? They don't say, they might say, I like the MacBook Air. What's comparable in a PC? And this would be fine.
I think there actually is a market of people who have had bad experiences on Windows and are starting to look around.
Well, there's a big market.
This is an opportunity. Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. So this is an opportunity for Microsoft to say, look, we know you want these qualities that you like to see in the Mac. Do we have them over here? So,
but that's why I don't think it has to beat it in benchmarks. It has to be comparable.
Yeah. Well, as it turns out, it beats them in bit.
But then you also question benchmarks full up anyway. Right?
But that was the point of my conversations with Ryan over the past couple of days were very enlightening. In fact, I'm probably going to do an interview with him as soon as I can, so he can you can all hear it from him. But he also has just sort of real world anecdotal experiences, and he's like, I never ran into any issues. So if you look at a MacBook Air and you close the lid and look at the very back of it, you'll see there's an area to vent heat at the back. It doesn't vent heat through the bottom, which is one of the problems on a lot of PCs, because if you want to put it on a soft surface like a bed or a couch or something,
that gets sealed off. Yeah. Your lap gets hot in a hurry.
Battery kicks in, you get that funnel effect we're also familiar with.
Yeah, and your CPU gears down, all those things.
So the laptops, these laptops all do have fans. The Surface devices, at least, I can't speak to the third-party devices. Very, very quiet. The Surface laptop, the one they're comparing to the MacBook Air, and my God, did they compare it to the MacBook Air?
Right.
Someone should make a clip of just them saying MacBook Air, and I bet they said it 150 times.
And once was a time where they never said their competitors' product names.
And now they're saying it too much.
Yeah.
We get it. You want to beat this thing. Jeez. Yeah. Anyway, it vents exactly the same way as the MacBook Air. So it does not have that
out the back.
Yeah, you don't have that problem. It's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. He said he has the DBA measurements under load, not under load, et cetera. He said this thing is silent. He said,
but it does have a fan.
It does have a fan.
Fan that thin. Like, it's got to make noise.
So MacBook or Mac people, Apple people will appreciate the comparison as to the MacBook Pro. And most of those people will tell you, because it has a fans. It comes on sometimes, obviously in the load, but it's very quiet.
Yeah.
And it's apparently landing in that area.
Okay. So very quiet.
Very, very quiet. So that's good. I was not happy when I discovered this. For whatever it's worth, I went into that showcase they had afterwards. I picked up the laptop. I looked under it. I looked all around it. You don't see any dots or vents or anything. I'm like, nice. And I
just presumed it was solid.
I walked out of there and I thought it was no fan, and I was wrong. So that's, this is the thing I've been talking about, I think, for 7, 8, whatever months. I'm waiting for that shoe to drop. I'm waiting for that day when some bad news comes out and ruins the whole thing. And we got right up to the launch day, and I finally got that bad news, and it was the fan. And it did have that moment of doubt for me, but I think it's fine. I think it's going to be fine.
It seemed like that bad of news, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but it was that kind of scary moment, right? It was like, oh, come on, really? You're going to just ruin this on the day it launches? Okay. So we should talk about Recall, which is the controversial feature, right?
Oh.
So Microsoft Recall is a feature that will only be made available on these PCs, right? Copilot Plus PCs. It requires the minimums for a Copilot, it is going to suck up a lot of storage space. I think the minimum is 25 gigabytes. You can configure it to do different amounts based on the storage you have. Obviously, it will stop doing it if you use up all the storage, et cetera, et cetera. It's opt-in. It's all on device. There's nothing going to the cloud or off the PC ever. It's protected by BitLocker, full disk encryption, and this new Windows Hello biometric technology, ESS, that they've announced for 24H2. I get that people don't trust Microsoft. You were talking to someone who has, or I am talking, I guess, but you are looking at someone or hearing someone who very much does not trust Microsoft in some ways. But the way this was presented and the way they've described it, and there's a lot of good information about it, I don't see any issues from a privacy perspective. But I also knew as soon as they started talking about it, because I know my audience, and especially guys in Europe or whatever, where I was like, oh man, people are going to freak over this. And the BBC published a very incendiary and I think irresponsible article in the guise of, let's let everyone just, Microsoft says it's no problem. And here's an insane person ranting about all the stupid things that could happen with no evidence whatsoever. And apparently he didn't even look at the announcement because he has no idea how it works. And, like privacy nightmare, and it isn't, it just isn't. It doesn't mean that things can't go wrong. Obviously bugs, whatever, but the technologies they're using to protect this data are well understood, have been around for decades, proven. Do you trust Microsoft? That's up to you. If you don't, here's an idea: don't enable it.
Yeah,
you
don't have to turn it on.
It's offered to you during setup, and you have full controls in the system through the settings app.
Switch it afterwards.
And look, we all have things maybe that we do on our computers that might be embarrassing. You can pause it. You can turn it off for specific apps. You can turn it off for specific websites, and those things will never be captured. It's impossible for this thing to happen and for there not to be worries and complaints and freakouts, and I get that. But this has been a kind of a sad but predictable overreaction. It reminds me of when they put Cortana on the PC, because we had Cortana on the phone, but not that many people had those phones. But when they moved it into Windows 10, I started getting people freaking out because they ran Cortana and it said, this thing wants access to my calendar. Like, yeah, it's a personal assistant. It has to have that. If you don't trust it for that, you can't use the product. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
This is that, but maybe exponential.
Extra dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to recap, all the concern was, it's exfiltrating everything I do to Microsoft. It doesn't, it can't.
It can't and it does not.
It stays on device, right?
All on device.
And even if it didn't, it's encrypted.
Yeah. I kind of would like a copy to be backed up to the cloud for me.
Yeah. So by the way, I don't be surprised if that comes. I met the guy who designed this feature. And you'll be fascinated to know that my concern was that it wasn't full featured enough.
Yeah.
Right. So for example, they're actually very serious about this, right? So let's say you reset your PC. So for some reason, you have to go back to the default. That's all blown away. It's gone. There's no way to.
You lose the recall volume.
Even on the device, you can't bring it with you.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
They're not doing anything screwy here. If anything, like you said, you might want that. Now, granted, that's a lot of data to go back and forth. But we have ways to trickle that stuff.
Yep.
And I think multi-device recall is going to have to be a thing at some point.
Yeah.
People are going to want that.
Yeah, and I think they're also smartly doing a minimum product now, so the customers will ask for it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. They're going to get feedback, and you will see. And by the way, this feature's in preview. It's not even fully formed. Even Copilot today, what are we, a year and a half into this on Windows? Is that no, not that long? I'm sorry, maybe 9 months into Windows. Is still technically a preview.
Yeah, but it does feel like they're starting to deliver stuff.
Yeah,
right? Like there was a lot of announcements of product, not ideas.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so interesting stuff. There's a lot of all the expected places. There are clip champ features coming that will take on the MPU. Photos app features, right, for all the expected things. They did some really neat little consumery kind of demos of those features. They're all fairly obvious. I think that my little concern here, other than the issue I brought up earlier about why we're delivering it in this fashion, is I think we all expected to some degree that some AI features would be made available more broadly, and that maybe it would work best this way, but if you have a GPU, you could still use it, or if you had a CPU only, it would still work, but it would be slow. And they've clearly drawn this line where, look, we have this whatever list of premium AI features. These are going to require this kind of a device. Very limited to Qualcomm right now. I don't think this is going to blow the world away right away. But in the fall and for the holiday selling season, AMD and Intel will have their chips, and all the PC makers will support them and with more devices, and then it's game on, and we'll see. But we're still talking about, I think Intel's wildest estimate was within 1 year, 40 million what they call AI PCs, which includes a bunch that don't qualify for this Copilot Plus thing, which is not great. Is not a lot in the span of 1.4 or 1.5 billion Windows PCs in the world, right? This is a slow boil.
Yeah.
So, and that's and by the way, part of the
I think they hope it's going to go faster, but
but they're not. They know it's not, and that's the thing. I know so many people at Microsoft and also PC makers, and I think to a one, as you have these kind of private conversations, they're like, it's going to
take a while.
It's going to trickle, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I just wonder about, companies are going to roll over machines, right? Like, I'm going to go tap my IT connections and say, like, how many of the employees are now asking for these machines?
Yep, it's going to be very interesting because
and the hardware support is going to be everything.
This is and this is what I think something you and I kind of debate a little bit is what's the hurdle to get people or companies in this case to move to an ARM-based PC, and
how does it behave with Active Directory? Yep,
I will say for that recall feature, it's fully controllable by IT with policy. It doesn't matter if you're using the Enter ID or the I almost call it Active Directory,
MSA,
or Intune, right?
Right.
It can be managed. So if you want to roll out these PCs, whether they're Intel or ARM-based, and you don't want your users to ever see those features, you can turn them off.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about so there's a compatibility layer, right? I mean, the issue for me with Windows and ARM was always, when I first tried it, there were even Microsoft, like the calculator wouldn't work. So I presume that all the Microsoft apps are native.
Leo, I'm excited to announce that Calculator now works in Windows 11 on ARM.
But what is the percentage of native apps, and how well does this emulation layer work?
So that's going to vary by people and what the apps they use, right? So Microsoft put up, pictures like. I will say, it's very interesting how many of these companies are supporting Windows and ARM right away. We had the announcement from Affinity today. The guys, Affinity Photo, et cetera, which is the app I use. Adobe had a big announcement. Their whole product suite's going over to ARM. Obviously all the web browsers are there. Office is fully native on ARM.
Right.
This is going to be a lot like the driver issue. Most mainstream users probably exist in a very kind of normal mainstream space, and most of those will have mostly native experiences. People like us are going to have esoteric
problems.
Yeah, we're going to be the problems. But the good news is for not so much for drivers, but for software, is they have a new emulator that is dramatically more performant. And
like, I'd like to benchmark something like AutoCAD, because I'm going to presume they're not going to try and implement it.
And this is another area for Ryan Schrupp, because that's something he tested, and he said honestly, and this is again, it's like the Chrome thing. Would it technically underperform Chrome on Mac by some percentage that you can see in a benchmark? Yes, but in real world use, just using it, you don't think about it.
It's fine.
It works. It's fine.
But that was key to Apple's transition from Intel. Was they had
they
called it Rosetta 2. They had in fact, they didn't call it an emulator. They call it a compatibility layer, which is nicer. And it worked, and it made the transition very painless. And so it sounds like Microsoft's doing the same.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And by the way, you can go watch that presentation. If you pay attention, you will see. I don't remember who said it, but one of the people on stage said the word Rosetta without any context whatsoever. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm sitting in a room with a couple hundred people maybe, and I might be one of three who understood what he meant by that, because he just blew through it. It was like a very quick reference, and it was one of, like I said, 150, 200 references to Apple, MacBook Air, and then Rosetta was one of them. Like they couldn't stop. and
comparing themselves to Apple over and over again.
It was a little pathological.
Yeah.
Like we get it.
And then the other thing that came up, I think a listener said, does this mean is it a transition like Apple's away from Intel? To which I replied, as long as there is a guy in Bengal who's selling doties on the street using Windows, that he will be supported, right? I mean, you're never going to dump Intel PCs.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to Intel. We're going to get to Intel because there's a whole story there, which is rather insane.
Okay, actually,
but I would just say, I'll just say the official company line is that we're going to have PCs from now. We have two architectures really, three microprocessor makers. By the way, this time next year we're probably going to have 5 or 7 because a bunch of companies are going to jump on the ARM thing. ARM Holding announced this, by mistake. I think.
Yeah,
there's going to be others.
Qualcomm had an exclusive, but I guess not anymore.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Look, there are always going to be workloads, for lack of a better term, that are going to just kind of be better or only possible on an Intel or whatever x86 computer. Gaming PCs, right? Obviously, certain workstation class devices, et cetera. People who have very specific needs for hardware and or software that, whatever runs very well on that stuff. We cannot add a discrete GPU to one of these systems. So if you want the NVIDIA graphics, which they are highly optimized, not just for games, but for just the AI workloads in a workstation type scenario, that's still going to be a better option for a while.
Yeah.
Now,
that's exactly Apple's situation, right? They don't have discrete GPUs anymore. It's gone.
Right. And that's, I would say, is the one, it's not an Achilles heel because most people don't need it, but it is the one little niggling concern, I think, for a lot of people. Like, oh man, but wouldn't it be nice? Yeah. Like this machine that Richard has here has a discrete GPU.
Has an RTX. I can feel it heating up my hand over here.
Right. It's doing its thing. That's how you know it's working. And, so,
but the M2, the M1, 2, 3, 4, they all have the GPU on the SoC.
That's right.
Right.
Well, and so does the Qualcomm chipset, obviously.
But it just means there's no flexibility. It is what it is. I mean, near as I can tell, we talked about this, there's only one Snapdragon X. They binned the different versions of it.
That is everyone's feeling, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to get them to admit to that.
No.
But yes, of course.
Interesting. Okay.
There are different cores. The GPU is consistent, if I'm not mistaken, across all of them, I think.
It just means if the GPU fails, they scrap the chip.
And I could be wrong about that. But I know the MPU is 100% the same on each.
Yeah.
There are different core, but not voltages,
performance versus efficiency, right? Yeah,
and that's very binny kind of behavior.
Someone told me that these
misbehaves at certain revs.
I think these are, he said it was 22 watt part.
That's so low.
Yeah, U series Intel is typical. Well, there's a range now, but typically was landed at about 15 watts. The P series they had briefly for 2 gens, 28 watts, and then the H series higher end chips, were 56 watts on the Intel side. Actually, I mean, Intel goes down to probably 8, but on a U or whatever. But
but it does explain the fan. I mean, these aren't super low power.
Yeah. So so someone might look at this and say, well, does that mean that to get the performance of an M3, they had to amp up the wattage / performance enough that you needed the cooling to be active? And I mean, I guess it does, right? But whatever.
There's also a question: is the downside of that SoC design?
Yeah.
Is it the NPU that's getting hot? Like, what's getting hot?
Yeah.
Like, one of the things that's interesting when you have discrete is like, it's very clearly the GPU because it's over here. We know that's where the GPU is.
I'm going to guess for most people, it's actually just the CPU, and it's because it's
that would be my guess too,
right?
Yeah.
I think that's why they had to land it a little higher. They're like, look, what we want to do is get that U series level of performance for productivity tasks. We need to run it slightly higher because we're emulating,
right? And as you got rid of your emulation software, maybe the fan never kicks on,
and your PC gets faster in a way. It's kind of a it's the way Apple would market it. It's like you got a new Mac in your Mac. So we'll see how it really.
Now you both said you want this Qualcomm Dev Kit. In fact, I'm thinking I should too. This looks pretty sweet, and it is the lowest cost way to get this Elite. And
it's a pretty good value for what it is, right? So. They had a dev kit for the HCX Gen, whatever, remember a year and a half ago or not, whatever it was. This is based on the Snapdragon X Elite. So it's actually the high-end version of the chip, which I was a little surprised by.
Yeah, but you got rid of the battery and you got rid of the screen.
Well, I know, but I figured they'd go in plus because they want developers to target the lowest end one, but they didn't. 32 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage. it's Type-C. By the way, these systems don't support Thunderbolt, but they do support USB 4. So it's the same 40 gigabyte, of data transfer. USB-C, USB-A, Ethernet, audio, HDMI for video out, etc. One of the many little digs against the MacBook Air was that you can connect up to 3 external 4K monitors at 60 hertz. If you have a laptop or one of the portable devices, that means you can have a total of 4 displays running at one time without having to do anything screwy. So, the MacBook Air is limited to 2. And they have a stupid mode where you can not use the display, but you have to close the lid and you can have 2 external displays. And it's like, guys, come on. But then again, most people don't need that. So it's not necessarily a big deal, but you got to, throw it in when you can. This looks like a nice little box, $900. I can't see me not getting one of these, honestly.
It's a NUC.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll experiment it with the Windows on ARM thing for a while, but I suspect I'm just going to load Linux onto it and run Home Assistant. It's going to smoke.
I'm going to. Yeah. My first thing though, I want to get it on a laptop. I just want to make sure it works with devices like when I'm at home and I use that Focusrite device to connect the microphone, and I want to make sure it works with all the stuff I actually use at my desk.
Yeah.
I don't have weird requirements, but that
I would turn that into a Home Assistant device that has OpenAI support directly in it. And it would, just be a monster for that. Probably do image recognition on it for the cameras.
There you go.
Be an amazing little machine. It's got so much torque. For $900, it'd be the best home computer you'd ever had.
Yeah. Yep. I wonder if it must have fans.
I imagine
a little bit of a downside,
but
but
it's got a vent on the side.
It'll be in the closet.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's got a fan. Yeah.
One of the, I think it was the Samsung device has. They must be vents, but it has these 2 slits on either. Well, one slit on either side.
I'll take the cover off it and just weld a big old chunk of copper to the top. We don't need no thinking fan.
This Samsung device, people were like, "Is that an optical drive?" It's like, no. It's
so when can I buy this?
So you can pre-order all the devices now. At least the Surface devices. I think everyone though, and
everything's up pre-order. I just pre-ordered one of those.
Okay.
Oh, you did? And they're on the Microsoft site?
Yeah, and No, the pre-order it comes from Qualcomm for that for that little NUC device, and it's not really a pre-order. It's let us tell you when you can buy one.
Okay.
So just name and email address.
All the laptops they announced will be out on June 18th.
Yeah, or they say it will be. We'll find out.
No, they will be. They're all coming out that day.
I don't know if you noticed this when we were at the tavern last night, but Jared had one.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No, I've already heard from 3 PC makers. They're all having events that day.
Okay.
So they're shipping.
Out.
Yep.
That's cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about $2,000 for the one I'd get with the 32 gigs and the terabyte.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why
so they come in.
This dev kit looks so good. It's half that.
Yeah.
That's right. And the Surface laptop that when you put it head to head with the MacBook Air price wise comes in at about $200 under MacBook Air.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like an accident.
Yeah.
Considering their fixation.
Yep.
So to get Prism and all of these features, Prism's the emulation area, I have to have 24H2. Is that?
So they will ship with 24H2.
Okay.
And the Copilot plus specific features on top of that. 24H2, Laurent, the guy who writes our news, just contacted me a little while ago and said, "Hey, 24H2 just went to the release preview." And there you go. That's how that happens, right? So, I believe everyone's going to get 24H2 in a couple of weeks or a month or whatever it is. You know how they do things now. So it will be some Tuesday of some month in the near future. But they're also going to update this thing over the course of the year. So when October comes, we'll be talking about 24H2 again. But
this is the Win 11 24H2. It's not going to be a Win 10 24H2.
Say again?
Is there going to be a Win 10 24H2, Paul?
No. They're going to keep on. I think they're going to stay on 22H2, aren't they?
Yeah. But I don't know. You tell me.
They'll add. Well, that's what they said. I mean, look, it's Windows.
They make stuff up. Stuff just happens. We'll find out. I'm keeping a Win 10 machine around just for the delight.
Yeah, I am too, actually.
Yeah.
Same thing. In fact, I just looked at it the other day to update it, and when I did all those updates on the last Tuesday, I guess, and I always do a WinVer, and I'm like, 22H2, how is this still on 22H? I'm like, oh right, that's Windows 10. That's they're sticking to 22H2. So.
All right. I want to find out more about this furor. You say everyone was mad. So
everyone is mad.
Is mad.
It's
all right.
Microsoft managed to pee off everybody.
It's awesome.
It's incredible.
We're going to
just
do
takes
that.
skill.
I like Dark Satya.
Stay tuned, Dark Satya. It's coming up. But first, a word from our sponsor. And I know you've heard about Collide. I've talked a lot about them for companies that use Okta. It's a way to make sure that not only are people going into your network who they say they are, but their devices are secured. It's just really, you need both, right? Well, maybe you also heard that Collide was just acquired by 1Password. Big news. Both companies lead the industry in creating security solutions that put users first. So it's kind of a natural match made in heaven. For over a year, Collide Device Trust has helped companies with Okta ensure that only known and secure devices can access their data. And they're still going to do that, but now as part of 1Password. And, this word is overused, synergy, but it is. There's a real synergy between these two companies. So if you are using Okta for authentication and you've been thinking, I agree with what this Collide, what they're proposing. We got to secure the devices and the software on the devices too. This is a great time. Don't hesitate. It's very easy to get started with Collide too. They come with a library of pre-built device posture checks. That's what they call the, is this device up to date? Is this browser up to date? That kind of thing. All of those, all the obvious ones they've got. And you just flip a switch, you're good. And then it's very easy to write your own custom checks for anything that's specific to your enterprise or your situation, right? Anything you can think of. Plus, and I really like this, you can use Collide on devices without MDM, like your entire Linux fleet or your contractor devices, and of course all those BYOD devices and laptops and phones in your company. Now that Collide's part of 1Password, it's just going to get better. It's really big news, and we're really happy to hear of Collide's success. Check it out. Collide, K-O-L-I-D-E, K-O-L-I-D-E, collide.com/WW is the website. There's a demo there. You can learn more. This is security that puts users first, because you've got to get users on your side. If you don't, you're in trouble. Collide really works. K-O-L-I-D-E, collide.com/WW. Thank them so much for their support. They're really a great company. We've had a great relationship with them, and we expect great things going forward. We're very happy with it. Collide. Now, Paul Thurrott, what's the big deal? Why are people so mad?
What's everybody upset about?
Microsoft, in their own special way, managed to really make everyone upset on Monday. It's amazing. And I will say, if you watch the event, it was very surface heavy. I had heard from multiple PC makers before this event that they were invited there, that this was not a Surface event. It was really about this platform, and they were all doing it. And we're all going to get equal billing. And then you sit through it and you're like, what happened? And at the end, it was like a throwaway, like, here's a table full of other computers. All right, thank you, good night. Wow. There was a showcase we went into, which giant room with all the computers, and it was all Surface computers. It was like a Microsoft store full of Surface computers. And I'm walking through it, I'm walking. And I finally run into someone I know on the other end of this. And I said, what's going on with with all this, like, you guys have this little nook, and it's all Surface stuff. And this person said, you have no idea how bad. I said it was like 60-40 split.
It wasn't.
It wasn't. It was 60-20-20. They said, if you walk another 10 feet, there's more Surfaces on the other side of us. They squeezed them in the middle in this tiny little area. And they all had like 2 computers each. And it was like this nothing little.
I wonder why they would even bother doing that.
Well, I could tell you, because three different people from PC makers expressed their shock at the difference between what they were told was going to happen. And then you arrive and it's all one-sided. You're not going up on stage. We're going to do videos from the CEOs. And it was all Surface, and no one was happy about that. So, wow. So first, PC makers very upset about their treatment. Like they were there to be part of this, and they were really not.
And not tell them until they arrived?
Yeah. Well, the worst one of all was Intel. Intel had people on site. I heard this from I had 2 sources tell me this story. Same story. They're on site. They get badges. They're ready. They were going to present
On Monday.
On Monday. Microsoft's like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. They took their badges away and asked them to leave.
Walked them out of the building.
Yep.
Holy man.
They were really mad.
I can't imagine why.
And that's why Intel put out a little press release that day saying, hey, we're doing this too. And oh, by the way, this other company says they got a couple of PC makers making a couple of devices. We have all the PC makers making all the devices.
Right.
And we are going to be there in time for the holidays. And they kind of just took apart each one of the little claims that Qualcomm was making and counted it with how much bigger they are. They were not happy. So I never heard anything about AMD, but I did notice during the day when Keynote had built, AMD got a couple of shout outs. And I'm thinking that might have been enough for them because they're involved at a different level too with Microsoft and have this other stuff going on.
Because Intel and AMD also had chairs in the VIP area at Build.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
That's really, I mean, you talk about taking an ally and making an enemy of them.
Well, and that just sounds like bad planning.
So
like if you're not going to put them on, why give them passes in the first place?
That's true too.
The issue is like from the PC maker's perspective, these devices are an alternative. They're one of they're a type of device,
right?
That has certain characteristics that I think customers are going to like. From Qualcomm's perspective, they're taking on Intel and AMD. They're not taking on Apple. This is about them. And Microsoft's like, no, this is all about the MacBook Air. And so Qualcomm, you would think Qualcomm, the darling of the day, right, would be happy with everything. They're not. And this is something I haven't gone back and watched, but according to someone, I can't tell you who, says they were all sitting there waiting to get all the Qualcomm stuff in the keynote. They didn't mention the word Qualcomm or Snapdragon until 40 minutes into this event. This was a 60-minute long event.
Wow.
Everything they talked about right now requires their hardware, required this significant investment on their part. And they were like, nothing?
Wow.
Nothing? We got nothing? Like they couldn't believe it. And they put stuff up on screen where it said Copilot Plus PC, AMD, Intel, Qualcomm. And it's like, but we're the only ones doing this.
Right.
And they were upset.
And yet they pushed Intel and AMD out.
Yep.
Like, if you're going to go in, like, what side are you on here?
Did you see a Qualcomm executive on stage during the event?
Not a bit. No, not
so
once.
They weren't there either.
No.
They also managed to upset NVIDIA. NVIDIA makes GPUs that vastly exceed the 40 TOPS requirement for this type of PC. They have, I think, a graphics card that does 476 TOPS, which is over 10 times the requirement.
Wow.
And Microsoft is writing all these features just to a little stupid MPU that it does 40 or whatever. And, the whole argument there, which, by the way, I've also heard from NVIDIA customers, right? People have these massive gaming rigs. Like, excuse me, how come I can't get this?
Yeah.
I spent $4,000 on this computer that can...
My 4080 should be able to knock this out.
Yeah. So it was kind of a unique thing. I thought I liked the event, and I'm excited about the platform. I ordered a computer. I love Surface, and I want that to succeed.
But you would have ordered an ARM computer, whether they called it Copilot or not.
Yeah, that had nothing to do with it. Yeah, of course.
Did you get the laptop or the tablet?
Laptop. Yeah, laptop. I want to do a direct head-to-head with the MacBook Air. Right?
Yeah, because you did. Yeah, you just did a review of the Air. So yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, there you go. So I walked out of there. The weirdness to me was how much Surface there was and how little PC. And then I walked in the showcase. And I started hearing from those guys, and I was like, okay, this is not good. And then I heard to talk to someone from Qualcomm, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? And then NVIDIA pops up, and you're like, yep, that's everybody. They did it.
At least it's an equal opportunity anger.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the only one that I didn't hear about directly was AMD. Actually, AMD, to my knowledge, I'm sure they were upset, but AMD seems happy to kind of go along with whatever's happening.
Right.
It's kind of a different vibe.
So it's
over
one
there,
thing if you say this is a Surface event. It's another thing entirely if you say we're creating a new category of PC called the Copilot Plus PC.
That's right.
That will be made by many people, a platform.
It was billed as Microsoft's vision for AI and devices.
Wow. Somebody blew it. Somebody blew it big time.
Yeah, they forgot to say it was Microsoft's vision for AI and Microsoft devices. It was, I don't know. I feel like a lot of this happened last second because, like I said, there were guys from Intel that were literally like, you have to leave.
There's a lot of this whole week that's been last second.
Yeah. Well, look, at a vague level, without getting into the details, I can kind of understand that, right? They haven't done this. It's been a while. It's been five years.
Yeah, since they've done a press analyst event.
Yeah, there's going to be some learning and relearning, I guess we'd call it. Ignite will probably go a little better. The next build will probably go a little better still. We'll get there, but
angering your partners.
I know, all of them. I mean, that's the thing. Look, you had to go into this knowing Intel was not going to be happy because, Qualcomm was ready, and how come you can't wait for the holiday season? What's the difference? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, obviously they want to get stuff out in the world as fast.
They wanted this ahead of WWDC.
Yeah.
That's what was important to them.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't you make it Snapdragon super happy? Because they're the ones who delivered you,
I know,
an event, a device ahead of WWDC.
Yep. I think for Qualcomm, this was also their, we kind of think in terms of the platform, like, is this the last ditch effort for this platform? But I think for Qualcomm, it's like, is this the last ditch effort for them? Because like I said, there's going to be a bunch of people competing with them all of a sudden. So maybe we'll see there'll be some.
No, they've got a head start right now.
Of course, a very, very good head start.
Yeah.
But what if there are versions of these things that are fanless next year? And
there will be, I would expect.
So Qualcomm is using, it's a 4 nanometer process. They were all Samsung. Are they still Samsung? Who's fabbing this? Do you know?
Yeah.
Is it TSMC?
Yeah, they moved. They used to, I think everything they did before this was
all Samsung.
Samsung rather.
Yeah.
But I believe they moved to TSMC.
Okay. But they're not getting, because Apple bought it all up, the 3 nanometer node. They're getting the 4,
which is also classic Tim Cook, right? Like he's historically done that. Locked up a manufacturing path.
The first iPod.
And the news story.
Every single of those.
The news story
all
is
the nanos.
that Jeff Williams, their COO, is in Taiwan right now, locking up the 2 nanometer chips from TSMC. So these other guys better find another fab.
Well, there's lots of fabs under construction right now.
The problem is TSMC knows this 3 nanometer node very well.
Yeah, you hit the real point, which is it's the skilled operators.
Yeah,
and they don't mysteriously appear. They're not fungible. You have to grow them and train them, and it takes time.
Yeah. And it's also been mutual with Apple. Apple has given them money to invent equipment, to EUV process, and all this stuff. So it is this synergy, which is why TSMC is so nice to Apple. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to get into this business. So there may be competitors, but Qualcomm more than
at which point Qualcomm motivated to have China invade Taiwan?
Do they have that power? Can they do that?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, Microsoft maybe.
I don't know. But it is, the good news for Qualcomm is after years of over-promising and under-delivering, it looks like they finally, we said this at the event, like, well, we'll see mid-2024 if they can deliver what they've said. And it sounds like they have.
I think by and large they have. Yeah. I like I said, waiting months. I'm waiting, for that one, it's not going to work, moment. And it hasn't happened. The fan thing is the closest I've gotten to it.
You were waiting for their Scarlett Johansson moment is what you were waiting for. He didn't get the reference. He didn't get the reference.
I got the reference. I just, I don't. Well, I don't
OpenAI is having its Scarlett Johansson moment.
Well, yeah, literally it is.
Literally.
Pick the wrong lady to mess with.
Exactly.
Oh, that's all right, though.
There are not a lot of people who have backed Disney into a corner ever.
They had Sam Altman on stage, that awkward non-human being standing shuffling around.
Yeah, he did make an appearance.
I am not a robot.
Altman was at the Surface event?
Yeah, no, he was at the keynote for Bill.
Keynote.
Yeah.
Okay, and Kevin Scott asked him the hard-hitting questions about Scarlett Johansson. So that was
Did
fine.
he?
No. So we did not. No, I mean, of course he did not. I got an interesting kind of awkwardness from both sides of that conversation where they both need each other very much. Yeah, and they don't want to.
They really don't wish. They wish that wasn't true.
Yeah, they don't want to make
being
in bed. Yeah.
Yeah, they want, and they don't want to make the other one mad.
But you know what? Isn't that echoes of Intel and Microsoft for decades?
Yeah. Oh my God, of course.
Yeah.
It's a Hall & Oates story. Is what it is.
Oh,
we need each other. Yeah. I mean, these companies have always kind of hated each other. I mean, that's part of the deal. That's that you partner with some company and they don't do things the way you do, and they don't always do what you want because they have their own agenda, and this friction. So that's the downside of the partner.
At this point, though, Qualcomm absolutely, at least in the PC market, needs Microsoft. I mean,
oh my God,
yeah. I mean, Qualcomm has a good business in phones, but if you want to be in PCs, you need Microsoft.
So I'm excited for this thing. I really am. I mean, I've been waiting. I want this so bad. I love the MacBook Air, but I want to run Windows, and I know I could virtualize it on here. That's stupid. I want the actual keyboard that has the right keys, and I don't know. So I'm excited for this thing. I've been waiting a long time for this.
Yeah. And are you excited about the AI part of it? I mean, seriously, does that rock your boat?
Here's the thing. So that recall feature that everyone's so freaking out about, right? I think we've all had this experience where we could actually use this feature, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the PC version of you walk into the kitchen, open the fridge, and you just stare at it for 30 seconds because you forgot why you were there. And then you're like, what am I doing again? And I think because of the way we do things out in the world, we have web browsers and apps, and we cloud storage, email, and there are all these different things everywhere. You forget where things are. And I literally, the night before the event, I was trying to find a presentation. And, back in the day when Microsoft tried to solve these problems with Longhorn and file systems and databases, it was all about metadata and the types of things people are not going to do, whereas this just relies on AI to analyze things. And, their examples, I think, make sense. Where's that presentation that had the blue slide with the tree or whatever, whatever it is. And then it's like, boop, here you go. Because this thing's doing.
This is the first real practical use of AI. I agree with you. In fact,
So
everybody who talks to me says, I don't want to chat with an AI. I don't care if it sounds like ScarJo or not. What I want is the AI to take a bunch of documents and help me understand them, summarize them, search them.
That's right.
And so I think recall is actually, I'm even thinking, this is good. I want Windows.
I think this is right. So I think I actually come to think of it. I think you guys were both riding me a couple of weeks ago about my whole file system. What was the iPad, right? The iPad doesn't need a file system. It doesn't need this. And it's like, well, it does, because it's not just that I'm old school and I have a certain way of doing things. There are just limitations in the system that make it hard to work with files, which is what we're doing. And it's interesting that this thing on Windows will help kind of get over that, because I have this anal retentive structure and folders and how I store things, because that's how I help myself remember where things are. I know where I often have this thing, if I forget something, I always put my phone in the same place. So if I'm standing somewhere and I'm like, where's my phone? I don't know. I don't remember where it is. I just know where I would put it. Right. And that's where I go. So with this type of thing, no, I mean, right. Yeah. That's how my brain works.
Sure.
So with this system, this will help, I think, the majority of people, the mainstream and me, but it's aimed more at the people who really don't think like I think. They just don't think about this stuff. Why would they? And the idea is, it's the reason we have recents in file experts. Here's the things you've been. That
was kind of my point. Is we don't want files, and in fact, Longhorn. That was the idea of Longhorn, right? Which never emerged. But you're not going to be document centric. You're going to be task centric. It's kind of what Google promised with Gmail. Hey, don't worry about categorizing your email.
You search.
We'll just search through it. And so this is very much like the recall for your whole life, as opposed to Gmail for your email.
There was I can't do this. Unfortunately, I'm so busy right now. Obviously we're here and then flying home. And then the day after we get home, we're traveling up to New York for the long weekend. But I'm going to sit down at some point and go over this video of the event again, because there were striking parallels to the past, many of them, including lots of references to Windows 8. Remember, we're reimagining Windows from the chipset to the whatever that phrase was that Snowski used to always use. They said that almost exact thing yesterday with this, and it's like, oh, do you really want to remind people of that? But also the recall thing, my knee-jerk reaction, aside from knowing people were going to freak about it, was this is the problem they were trying to solve with Longhorn. But I think this time they're actually going to do it. There was a brief moment there where it was like, this, what was that thing called, the database file system, WinFS?
Which disappeared also.
Yes. It was like, oh, this is going to make sense. This makes sense. It doesn't make sense.
It's just hard to do. It's hard to
showed
do.
up somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it turns out maybe the hard part was not keeping the data. The hard part was finding stuff in the data, the needle in a haystack. And maybe that's what AI is so good at.
The recall UI is very reminiscent of that timeline feature that debuted in Windows 10 and then disappeared later. And you get a vibe, like all those things I just said. Like you think back to WinFS in Longhorn, or you think back to the reimagining of the platform in Windows 8, or the timeline feature for Windows 10. It was like, these were ideas that were always good in a kind of a vague way, but we didn't have the technology to make it work.
Yeah.
But now we do, and I think now you see things where you're like, wow, this is reminiscent of something I remember, but never worked. And maybe it is AI that puts it over the top.
Well, and speaking as someone who's, knocking on the door of dementia, I'm me.
I'll be right next to you in the home, Leo.
Standing at the refrigerator, I stand everywhere.
I look forward to meeting you. I look forward to meeting you again every day.
Who are you again? Oh, no, I know this because my mom has. I didn't even know she had Alzheimer's, and then the doctor said, she has Alzheimer's, and it's been very progressive. Yeah. It's fascinating. She's very happy, but she can't make new memories. She has all the old stuff she remembers, but she can't make new memories. And I'm starting to feel like that. Like, what was the name of that? For some reason, I can never remember the name of the Kindle Scribe. I don't. There's something about it. I just go, it's that Kindle, the big one, the one you write with. What's the name of that? And there's certain gaps in my brain like that.
And called him Brad.
Yeah.
Oh, why?
So, I'm like, I only know a few people who look like you. You're just going to be Brad now.
So for us boomers, I don't know. Are you a boomer, Paul? I don't think you're a boomer.
No, I'm not. But I'm
a boomer.
No.
There is a growing market, I'm being facetious, but there is a growing market for people, especially because we now have so much data. I have 200,000 photos.
Yeah, right. It doesn't matter how your brain works. I mean, there's too much data. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You don't have to have Alzheimer's, do you? This is a problem for all of us.
Yeah. But I bought the limitless pin, that's the same idea, by the way. They make something called Rewind for the Mac that does kind of what Recall does. But I want this pin to just, please, would you take notes on everything that happens?
So you want a dash cam on your face.
Exactly.
You want, it's the personal assistant who leans in. You're meeting someone at a party and they're like, that's Bob, he's from whatever company. Like, hey, Bob, good to see you again. How's your wife? How's your wife Stacy doing? Like whatever it might be. But you want it to be seamless.
Still afraid of squirrels?
Yeah.
Well, Gordon Bell, who just passed, chief scientist at DEC, he created digital equipment, computers and so forth. Really brilliant guy. His wife, Gwen Bell, had Alzheimer's many years ago. And he created the, I can't remember, he had a name for it, the mimetic or something. He used to wear a camera around that every few seconds would take a picture. He had this idea 30 years ago when the technology wasn't there. And but he wanted to record his life. And he was very aware of this because of his wife. He wanted to record his life so that he could refer back to it. This to me may be the single, I know AI is going to cure cancer, fine. But I want to remember who I met yesterday. This is going to be the single most useful thing AI can do.
This is what we wanted from a digital agent.
This is what an agent does. It knows
yes.
That a conversation about lunch tomorrow makes the calendar items.
That's right.
And the reservation.
You see little hints in things, right? Gmail has this feature where it says, you asked this question 5 days ago, never got a response.
Perfect.
You want to prompt them again.
Perfect.
Right? That, like, you see it everywhere in little bits,
That's what a real assistant would do, right? A real assistant would remember everything for you, so you didn't have to.
I was just joking about a guy several years ago. I was at an event like this, and I'm in the press room, and this guy who worked for Wagner and some came in and said, hey, Paul, I just wanted to follow up. You asked a question of whoever yesterday, and here's the answer. You gave me the answer. And I'm staring at him. I didn't say anything. He's looking at me. He says, what's the matter? And I said, are you out of your mind? So let me tell you something. I've been dealing with your company for whatever the time was at the time, 15 years. I said, no one has ever followed up with anything I've asked. I said, you're not going to make it here.
That's not how. You're not long for this job.
This is not how it works.
You're going to be promoted.
Your job is to write down what I ask and then ignore it.
Yeah.
So, that is what you want, right? You actually want that follow up. I didn't ask the question not to get the answer.
And by the way, R.I.P. Gordon Bell. Really amazing fellow. I had the pleasure of interviewing him several times. He started the Computer History Museum down the peninsula here or the Computer Museum, it was called. He was co-founder along with Gwen Bell. Just really an amazing fellow who accomplished so much, passed away on the 17th. He was in his 90s, I think. Yeah, he was 90. So, we should we should mark his passing because he was very, very important in a lot of this stuff.
I agree.
Let me take a break because I want to show you my new PC that I'm very happy with. This portion of Windows Weekly brought to you by HP and Intel and the new HP EliteBook 1040 G11. Yes, it has a Copilot key. Really awesome. It's HP's first commercial AI PC. It's got Intel Core Ultra processor designed with AI acceleration to empower your workforce, deliver exceptional performance, battery life, and world-class security. And it's available today, which is something to be said for. Interestingly, HP has done some really smart things with this EliteBook 1040 G11. For instance, their Smart Sense. They've had this for a while, but I'm blown away. Notice this is not plugged into the battery. I'm plugged into the HDMI, but it's running on battery because Smart Sense, which monitors what's going on in the PC, automatically makes adjustments to energy hogging resources. So you get unbelievable battery life. Now they're saying 29-hour battery life. I haven't left it unplugged for 29 hours, so I can't verify that. But all I can say is I've left it unplugged for days at a time, and this thing works flawlessly, starts right up. It balances the battery, the fan, the processor, everything that's running to let you focus on what you're up to. And the PC just, it's there, it's responsive, and it's amazing battery life. Great audio too on this. You may remember HP acquired Poly Studio some time ago. This Poly AI-driven audio is incredible on this laptop. Thin, it's light, and it sounds amazing. Plus the Windows Studio effects on the camera, the studio effects have automatic face framing. They do the eye contact thing where you're looking at the screen, but to your Teams or Zoom caller, it looks like you're looking right at them, deeply into their soul, as a matter of fact. It's got adaptive dynamic voice leveling, so you don't need a standalone microphone. Optimal voice clarity based on the environment because it does background noise reduction and more. And, of course, it has the Copilot key, which means it also has Copilot, the AI assistant that automates your workflow by suggesting personalized optimizations and streaming for efficiency, using learning deadlines and personal productivity patterns to help you set priorities and manage your time effectively. This is what we were just talking about. Windows 11 Pro on this guy, it comes with either the latest Intel Core Ultra 5 or 7 processor. I left out one of the things I most love about this. It's got a beautiful 14-inch OLED display. I just don't want to buy a computer without an OLED anymore. I mean, they look so good. So good. 5-megapixel camera. You've got HP Wolf Security for business, locks it down, and so much more. If you're a business and you're looking for laptops for your employees, this will adapt to your workers' personal needs and behaviors. They regain meaningful time and focus on meaningful work. You're going to love it. They're going to love it. Happy employees, happy business. Go to hp.com. Just search for the HP EliteBook 1040 G11 to learn more today. Yeah, available right now. We'll also have a link in the show notes, so you can just click that. That's the hp.com website. And then you search for HP EliteBook 1040 G11. This is really... And let me just pull this up for you so you can see it fully. I love, this one's kind of cream colored. I just love the thin light, great look, never gets hot, very impressive. Thank you, HP, for, they keep doing great laptops, and thanks for supporting Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell, they are live from Seattle at the Build 2024 conference. And on we go.
Yeah, I'm using an OBSBot Tiny 2 for this.
Oh, I have the OBSBot Insta.
Yeah.
No, I have the OBSBot, but I also have the Insta 360. Yeah, but I have the OBSBot. I like it. Yeah. That does
So
all
the main
that.
thing here, this situation is get it far enough away from us that two of us can be in the shop.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's probably
I
fighting
love that all
every
that
step
stuff's
of the
built
way.
into the laptop. You don't have to carry it around.
So
you know.
great. So
My
great.
bag gets heavy.
Yep.
My bag is heavy. I could see a song coming on. I have a heavy bag. So let us
And my bag is heavy.
let us continue on with news from Microsoft. When I picked up my laptop, I shut down the notes. Let's see where we are here. Oh, Microsoft 365.
Yeah. Just a couple things. I mean, a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about from here on out could be anywhere in the show notes because they're all kind of interrelated. But in the Microsoft 365 space, the three things I pulled out, I guess. Microsoft announced Team Copilot, not to be confused with Teams Copilot, like Team Copilot.
Right.
So this is a team-based version of Copilot that will work across Microsoft 365 apps and services. So acting as a personal assistant for the team, if you will. It won't be out anytime soon. It's going to be in preview later this year, but it will work across Teams, Planner, Microsoft.
But now you're going to see a Copilot entity in your meetings.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And, you'll set them off on tasks, take notes, summarize, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I'm thinking about the agent perspective of, and you've always had that person in your meeting.
Yeah.
That's the one who said, oh, you said you were going to do this. Who's actually going to do it? And when will it be done by?
What we were just describing.
Yeah.
The person sitting there taking notes.
All the notes.
Yeah.
Right. So now this is the beginning of that, the tool doing it in Teams.
Yep. Yes, that's good. A bunch of new Teams features. Compared to everything else, it's like whatever. Like all this
for
stuff.
folks who are actually, regular work, this is a lot of pain.
I'm not. I am sorry. I didn't mean to discount. I didn't mean it like that. I'm just saying, from my perspective, you get this kind of fire hose of information.
It's hard to.
I always, you must too. Like a lot of the feedback I get from people is in the form of an exact question about a specific feature.
Yeah.
Like you'll say, hey, Microsoft updated Loop with whatever features. Like, yeah, but did they add this feature? No, I would have written that. Just not that one you want, I guess. Sorry. So
they looked at it, thought you wanted it, and they didn't make
they said no. In fact, we're taking it away.
Yeah, not an option. Expect your license to be revoked any moment.
Yeah. There were a lot of announcements around Loop actually to that point. But Loop in kind of an interoperable sense. That'll be one of the sessions. Actually, I think two of the sessions I'm going to watch will be Loop related. So there's some stuff going on there, which I'm actually very interested in. And then Microsoft Edge, the browsers this is going to start to feel really familiar because, Google and Apple soon are going to announce the exact same things again and again and again. So we talked a little bit about like Chrome and bringing SLMs to Chrome and all the AI features help me read, et cetera, et cetera. On the Microsoft side, we have this real-time video translation feature, right? And this is the idea is that you're going to be watching a YouTube video or whatever it might be, and it will support translating it, from just a few languages in the beginning, but eventually all languages, of course, will be doing Babelfish in real time. So you'll be able to watch a YouTube video that might be in French, let's say. Actually, should I say French? Nope, French is not supported. So let's say Spanish, and it will translate it in real time to English, et cetera. You can also go from English to German, Hindi, Italian, Russian, and Spanish right now. More languages are coming later.
Wow, so they didn't just go a set of Romance languages, it would have been easy. I mean, they're really that's a bunch of hard problems solved there.
Yeah, there you go. It's not clear why they chose those exactly. But so, just kind of across the board, I spent a chunk of yesterday.
AI not as a product, AI as a feature within a thing you already use.
Yeah. We had gotten a bunch of materials up front. Like I said, wrote up some articles up front. The Windows stuff happened, wrote a bunch of articles about that. And then you get up on Tuesday and they make all these other announcements and they start adding more content. You're like, okay, I gotta cover this. I gotta cover this.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff. So yeah, it's been kind of I think I wrote 10 articles yesterday. It's been
that's a machine.
Kind of a tough. Yeah, I wrote 0.5 articles today. So it's catching up to me. Yeah,
it's good you had a buffer built in.
The average is
today's not going to be a good day.
The average is good, but Fitbit would not be find that to be acceptable.
Oh man.
Okay, and then on the AI side, again, some of the stuff could be elsewhere.
A little arbitrary.
Yeah, Microsoft. I think it was February or March, whenever it was. They announced their Phi family of on-device SLMs.
Right.
There were 3 versions. I think it was mini, small, medium, different versions. I think it's the smallest one, which is the one that could fit on a phone.
Right.
A couple of different versions there. This week at Build, they announced their first multimodal model, which is Phi Vision, which does image input, and I think it's just input, right? This is one of the tricks with AI. When you think about the language of AI, multimodal, right, means it's not just text, or it's literally multiple modes. I suppose you could have a modal
video,
SLM
audio
that only did video or something, but we tend to think of it as text as the most basic. But multimodal could do two or more, right? So in this case, it's image based. But these are free. They're open source. Well, yeah, no, they are open, right? They're open source. I think they are open source. Run on device, etc. So these are getting interesting. I mean, so it's one day later. I'm sure someone has announced a better SLM, but at the time, these are.
I just like that we're having small language models. Like that whole idea of this is right sizing is happening.
These are going to proliferate in a way that will feel like malware.
Yeah.
And it's weird because these things are humongous. It's like getting a bunch of day one Xbox game updates every day, but they'll be in the browser, they'll be on your phone, they'll be on your PC if you have one of these Copilot Plus PCs.
You can talk to your phone, but you can't do anything else with it because all the memory is
a little busy right now. Yeah, exactly. That's why we're already seeing these rumors, next gen phones, Google, Apple,
memory's bumped up.
Bumped up big time. Yep.
Yeah. And I imagine the NPUs will be bumped up too.
Yeah. Yep. So that's that. And then what else?
There was a big point that I think Satya made it, so did Kevin Scott. It's like 6 times the performance for a 12th of the compute cost.
That was actually an interesting thing that I felt like maybe could have been highlighted even more, which was that
it's not a good description.
Yeah, because one of the big stories with AI to date has been just the sheer cost of it.
Yeah.
And how are they going to make this make sense? And
I think they're just trying to stay ahead of the carbon footprint of LLMs.
They're apparently not doing a great job of that, as it turns out. But forget about SLMs. But I mean, just up in the cloud, much more capacity and much more efficient much more efficient, which saves money
from a compute perspective.
Yeah. Someone had asked about how many times did Microsoft say the word Copilot during the day one keynote. I don't know that answer, but I can tell you that
it's a big number.
In the truncated version of the book of news, which has since been updated 100 times across only 35 pages, AI clocked in at over 130 references.
Yeah.
So that was one of my little takeaways before the show. But bunch of announcements related to GitHub Co-pilot, which is now available in Visual Studio. We'll get to that in a moment. They are once again consolidating. This is, I think, the rapid release cycle of Copilot has caused, branding changes, and now they're going to consolidate the naming and presumably the availability of add-ons or the extensibility model for Copilot across wherever it appears. Now these things are going to be called. I don't actually get that right. Yes, they're going to be called extensions.
Yeah.
Previously, we had plugins and connectors. Now they're all going to be extensions. You'll be able to create your own extensions using Copilot Studio or the Microsoft Teams toolkit for Visual Studio. Microsoft will use extensions to enhance Copilot across all of its endpoints, of course. There'll be new actions, which are those things in Windows that allow it to work with the product, and new custom GPTs with grounded to whatever.
Did you notice they actually set a number for GitHub Copilots?
A number
subscribers?
Of subscribers.
Yeah, it's 1.8 million.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's in it, what, $10 a head per month?
I have, we've always talked about how this might be the ultimate example of a Copilot, the best one, if that makes sense. And,
well, it's the original.
No, but not just that. It's just it's so perfect for that audience.
Yeah.
And it does appear, this has been repeated throughout the show.
But for most industries, making 18 million a month is pretty good.
Yeah.
And for this one, maybe not.
Interesting.
I mean, GitHub, let's be clear. GitHub never made money.
Right. And
then Microsoft acquired them, and the reaction was, well, they never need to.
I think of GitHub as infrastructure. You know, so this is like
plumbing for the world.
Yeah. If this is a tip jar or whatever you want to call it, where, like money will throw in and will,
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's many more things that GitHub could be doing, and that lots of people will pay for them.
Yeah.
Right. I really need a really great bill of materials system when it comes to software. Which one of my apps has Log4j? Like, that's not a simple thing to answer across a larger organization.
Yeah.
And managing projects on scale, but you see them doing this with workspaces and things. Like, we're headed down that path where these are good products,
right,
that organizations will want to pay for. I think GitHub Copilot at $10 a month is underpriced.
We've spent the past several years dealing with and thinking about, OneDrive or other cloud storage integration with the file system in Windows, right? One of the little features we'll talk about in a few minutes related to dev features in Windows is Git integration with the Windows, with File Explorer. And when I first saw that, what's the point of this? I mean, you can obviously replicate a repository from GitHub down to your computer, work with it locally, sync them up, command line, or use a graphical tool like Visual Studio. But they're actually doing some kind of a smart push through in File Explorer. We can look inside the folder that represents the repository and see where things are. They have columns, and I don't know if you saw this, the details view, where it will tell you like when it was committed, what the notes were for that or whatever. And it's not going to benefit like my wife, but that's a cool feat. Like, it's cool. I think GitHub all the things would be my message there.
Yeah, well, it's true. And one of the things about workspaces is this idea that it's not just for software developers. It is right now, but ultimately it's going to be a collaboration tool.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, this is this is a solution that was designed originally for teams of people.
Yeah.
Working on something together, a project. Software coding based, but there's all kinds of reasons.
Now you insert this idea of a digital project manager, the nag part of running a project.
Yep. And an intelligent assistant that can run on top of it and say, hey, this is something that could replace like the Basecamp type products in the world, or even stuff like Notion, really.
Sure. And then, pump it in with the graph. So it's like somebody else has worked on this and they're over here.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty compelling.
Yep.
We had Charles Lamanna pop up for a minute there to talk about Power Platform and all the co-pilots in there too.
I have on my list of post-build tasks is I'm going to talk to Gary Peretti. Gary? He's on that team. He's going to assist me with this because I feel like I'm really behind on the Power Platform stuff. So
it's well worth your time. Yeah. It's an impressive product. But the reason is you don't work in a big company where you're building all these forms and things because it's really an internal product.
It's also something Microsoft has been working on for several years. So when all of a sudden this notion of co-pilots and, we're going to make these things into agents. And they're like, we've been doing that forever. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So now they have this capability that they're spinning up that's become very important to people. Whereas, 5 years ago, I don't know that many were paying attention to it. So
that power, there was 8,000 people at that Power Platform conference, man. People care.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
And then just real quick, just from sort of an educational perspective, Microsoft partnered with Khan Academy. And they had the guy from Khan up on stage.
Yeah, they actually had Khan on.
Salman
Khan. Khan. So they have a K-6 teaching assistant called Khanmigo, which is such a great name. They're now on Microsoft Azure OpenAI service, and they're collaborating, and Microsoft is paying so that people can get free training through it. They're bringing it to educators and students.
Yeah, and anywhere in the U.S.
Yep.
Like right away, I'm thinking, Canada should have that too. Although they'd have to be hosting it up in Canada for that to be fair.
Right.
But the idea that you can do drills with your students using the software and then have it reported back, summaries reported back to the teacher, so the teacher gets a spectrum of.
What about privacy, Richard? Though, I mean, what if the students don't want those things back to the teacher?
I think if students couldn't give a crap, their parents might be freaking out. But the parents also are trying to get an education. I'm kidding, but I think it's really interesting to start. We've always separated the two. Right. Like to really have tools that feed the teacher can build curriculum.
Yep.
The tools helping them build the curriculum. They can generate work plans from that curriculum that can actually be enacted through the software as well.
Right.
The students get to work on those individual work items, and then the results are aggregated back to the teacher.
Yeah, and they don't have a name for this yet, but they're working together on a new version of that Phi 3 model SLM that's being trained on Khan Academy's educational content.
Yeah.
Right? So there you're going to have a grounded SLM specifically for math problems and other education.
So you have that conversational engine. Now you get into learning differentials. Some kids have a tough time learning. So the fact that the software would be very capable of presenting it in different forms tuned to an individual student's capabilities, so that ultimately the teacher is able to measure the student's aptitude more than their ability to work with an interface.
In the 1980s. I'm sorry.
They say you're not a dreamer, Richard.
I do a half a dozen trips to high schools every year.
Really?
Talking to students about,
good for you.
technology careers.
Nice.
And so, and I spent a lot of time with those teachers too. Like, man, I don't envy their job. It is so very hard. And part of my motivation is, you know, it's one thing to go stand in front of a, you know, 40-something years old who paid a couple of grand to be there. Like, they're pretty motivated listeners.
Yeah.
Try it with a pack of 14-year-olds, man.
Right.
Like, that's hard work. If you can light a 14-year-old up, you've done something.
In a system with no money, you can't do anything.
It's just desperate. And they're baffled that I volunteer for this. They have to have teachers. We'd like to compensate. It's like, listen, I get paid plenty. Like, you don't need to pay me for this.
Right.
I am better for doing these days. I get lovely notes from some of the kids, you know, and once in a while you light a kid up who's never heard of a thing he'd want to do in his life until, you know, we talk about technology.
Good for you. That's awesome, Richard. Good job.
I got one of those coming. I got a couple of those coming up next week on Tuesday with Pine Tree, and just a nice group of teachers. And it is an exhausting day.
Oh yeah,
but boy, it's a rewarding one.
That's hard work, and they do it every day.
And they do it every day. You're damn right they do. Yes, and it's like, I can do it for a day, and then I need a nap.
Right. My oldest sister is a high school teacher, and
is she? Huh? Neat.
It's just spiraling. You know, this is the way the educational system.
But
it's terrible.
The fact that they're going to offer this tool up for free, if the teachers are willing to learn it, like, I just take a sense that this is an opportunity for the quality of education to substantially grow in a system that's really been weakened.
Right.
We should be spending more on this. Teachers should be better paid. But if, you know, one of these mega corporations is going to cough up the pennies from their perspective to run this system, you know, Khan's been doing great work, building incredible curriculum that motivated individuals can go jump into and learn from. To just make it surface that any teacher who wants to teach better can use the tool, like, good on them, man. Make a difference. It's not, you know, it's not going to change the bottom line for Microsoft.
As long as the, you know, school boards and the city councils don't say, hey, we don't need teachers anymore. We got this.
That won't happen.
You still need the humans. Oh, I know.
You know that's coming.
Yeah. Well, and it's the thing is, like, I'm hoping that they're producing results back to teachers so that teachers know how to optimize their time for the challenges the individual students have. Like, that would be the reward, that the base teaching is automated.
Right.
And now you can deal with exception teaching.
Well, this is what we talk about with AI everywhere. It's like you can focus on the actual job.
The hard parts. Yeah. And that's when I went and read all the material on this, I'm like, this is how you take the 80% out so that you can do wonders with the 20.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's super rewarding for a teacher, you know, to actually be able to focus on the kid who was getting it.
Yeah. They want to give that kid the attention. They just don't have the time.
They have to take care of the 80. Right. That's fair.
Right.
You know, but if we can if the tools can help take care of the 80 and the 20 get a benefit, we all get a benefit. Like, we want public schools to work because we need educated buyers.
Yeah.
And voters should be good too.
Yeah. Oh, educated voters would be really nice.
That'd be something.
You're watching Windows Weekly with the Mother Teresa of Tech here, Mr. Richard Campbell. Yeah. And Paul Thurrott, I don't know. You're the Father Coughlin. I don't know who you are, but we'll find you a role.
I think maybe Rumpole of the Bailey.
Rumpole of the Bailey. Windows Weekly, Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell, and you great Windows dozers and winners. On we go with the show. Let's see. Time to talk about developers.
Yes, this is fascinating to me.
You're excited.
This is fascinating. We're sitting there in the audience of Monday's event. They're talking about Windows 11 and 24H2, but it's not really, because they have these special features that are only for Copilot plus PCs. Pavan Davaluri all of a sudden says this term and keeps going, much like the Rosetta comment.
Mm-hmm.
Windows Copilot runtime. I'm like, wait, what was that? What did you say? Runtime. Last time we talked about a runtime was probably Windows RT, or the Windows runtime, WinRT, with Windows 8, and that the fundamental debate over whether this was native code or not native code, it's just Windows, all this stuff. That's nonsense, right? .NET is a runtime, right?
.NET has a runtime, but it also has a framework.
Yep.
And this seems more like a framework.
This is absolutely not a runtime. So there was no information about this on Monday. And none. And I was desperate to find out something about it.
And this was what we were talking about a while ago about it. If Windows was really going to be the hub, you'd need a framework to allow all these apps to pull in.
So it is, yes. And so I don't like that they call it a runtime. And you could read, they published now a bunch of information about it. Absolutely not a runtime. There's no runtime involved, right? What it is there's a library that has APIs. There is a set of AI frameworks that it works with, like DirectML, Onyx, etc. It supports tool chains like Olive and the AI toolkit for Visual Studio Code. But the thing I'm focusing on here is the APIs, right? The Windows Copilot library. And on Tuesday, Satya Nadella mentioned this, and he referred to it in the context of Win32. He's been CEO now enough that I'm already getting tired of the stories he keeps repeating.
10 years, yeah.
But one of his first experiences at Microsoft, I've heard the story so many times now, was at the so-called Win32 PDC back in 1993, I think it was, when they were launching NT. And he equated the Windows Copilot runtime and or the Windows Copilot runtime, I'm sorry, to Win32, right? Or maybe the Windows Copilot library, which is maybe the thing that is closest to that. And yeah, I guess in the sense that the Win32 API was a library of APIs, functions you could call as a developer in a specific language. Yeah, I guess it's sort of like that. But then it gets vague and it gets weird, right? So it's going to work across, this is how they described it. In other words, there will be APIs for Win32, makes sense, but it doesn't because I don't think it's what people think that means. Web apps and the Windows shell. Huh?
And how are those three things related?
How are they? What do they mean by each of those things?
Yeah.
So here's my guesses. I don't actually know how one extends the Windows shell. I'm going to guess it's a COM-based interface type of thing. But let's forget about that one because that has never been mentioned since that one throwaway line. I'm just going to not worry about that. But Win32, I will bet my retirement on there are not going to be Win32 APIs, and that's going to be it. I think this is really tied to this WPF thing. That when they talk about desktop and even Win32, I know it's ridiculous. I think they actually mean that. I know it's .NET. Yeah, but I think that's what they mean. I think they're throwing out Win32 as like a be all for the just desktop, the web app bit, we have to kind of guess there, but I think these are going to be the types of JavaScript APIs you would access like from React Native.
There was a wrapper that was made a while ago
where you could access Win32 functions from.
Well, to basically take your Win32 app and give it the hooks to make it so you could deploy it to the store.
Yeah.
Right. And so, it was basically a way to modernize a Win32 app without rewriting it.
You're talking about not Samuel Islands.
No, that's a different thing.
Okay.
But it is along those lines. There was a code name for it back in the day.
So this thing is not coming out until June. And unless something has changed since I wrote the article and announced it, there wasn't really any information about the actual details. But I doubt any of this is native code. If people, I know people still seem to care about that for some reason. I think these are going to be higher level abstractions in the form of functions and in whatever languages. If it makes sense to target .NET languages, right? Obviously, like C# and JavaScript, I guess. And we'll see.
The way you could look at WASM as a technology like that, it's a way to wrap JavaScript up.
Yeah.
But think about it from the perspective of, in a perfect world, every application has its own instance of Windows, right? So that you can't interfere with each other. There's no driver, no DLL hell, malware doesn't work because it has no ability call. This is what they try to do with Windows 10X. Yep. And then you immediately turn it off because you had that one app, right?
Did you catch the 10X, not a reference, but the allusions to 10X?
Yes.
We'll get to this too. This
is so the idea that we stick a wrapper around existing software to give it that effect. That you're basically intercepting everything the software asks about other apps and other spaces and lying to it, as well as presenting it to the system as a well-behaved common citizen of the system. So and then you add in the Copilot extensions. It's like, and now it gives an interface so that the LLM has an understanding of what the application's capabilities and can send those commands in and get results back from it. Like that gives you a common set of interfaces for creating this hub of Windows Copilot across all software.
I'm going to divert here slightly because you've just reminded me of something that I think is kind of important, which is that Stevie Batish a year ago, of course, talked about orchestrators and how Windows in many ways is the best orchestrator.
Ideal orchestrator,
One of the interesting problems with the AI stuff in Windows specifically, right? Let's stick to Windows here. Is that you have these capabilities that are in the operating system that Microsoft is exposing to developers through these, they specifically called out things like creative filters, portrait light, eye contact, teleprompter, portrait blur, voice focus. These are things from Studio Effect.
Right.
That they're effects. They're making these available to developers to put into their own apps. Under the covers, these things, in this case, I actually know how they work. They target the MPU. So if you have an MPU, and this does not require a 40 TOPS MPU, but if you have an MPU, you can access this functionality. And if you don't, you can't. But a lot of the features that are AI based, whatever they might be, background photo blur, blah, 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 whatever, can probably work across a CPU if you need it. If you have
Sure.
it could work across GPU. Sometimes that's going to be better.
Slower.
It could work against an MPU.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, what you really need is an orchestrator to look at the tasks that has been requested, examine or already know the quality of the system, know where it is in its state at the moment, because maybe this thing that would be very efficient on the GPU, but the GPU is getting hammered. Does it make sense to push it over to the MPU/CPU?
Right.
You need an orchestrator.
Yeah. Coordinator. Yeah. But I get it.
No one has discussed this concept at all.
No.
And in many ways, I think when they talk about a Copilot Plus PC, they basically pushed off that decision, so to speak, because they're just saying, look, here's the set of features we're going to have. They're only going to run on an MPU, and it has to be this kind of an MPU.
Right.
And they've just given up on that. Not given up. They're not doing that yet. To me, the orchestration of this should happen under the covers. This is not something an app should have to do.
No.
Like
this
back
is something
in the day,
this is the responsibility of an operating system.
Right. The old school version of this is that one of the big advantages that WordPerfect had over other word processors in the DOS days was they had all these printer drivers, and they had to write them specifically themselves. It was in Word, Perfect. And Microsoft's argument eventually was like, look, we have a platform called Windows. We think those should be in Windows, and they should be available to all apps.
Right.
And there's a pushback in the beginning against this kind of thing, just like there was when they added the networking stack at one point, or whatever.
You're disrupting a market.
You're right. You're disrupting it, but you're doing it for the benefit of mankind, so to speak, or whatever. And I think I don't want to see like Adobe saying, "All right, we're gonna." This is like runs best on Netscape Navigator.
Right.
Adobe's going to say runs best on NVIDIA GTX, whatever. It's like no. The idea is you should have this stuff, and the system should decide to orchestrate where those things go on the fly, and also with the knowledge of what the various capabilities are.
Yeah.
And that you're essentially saying, I have these needs. You figure out how to best serve them.
And towards the end of day one keynote, Kevin Scott talked about DirectML, and it really gave the sense that it was the equivalent of DirectX, but for those kinds of computation.
Okay, so maybe that's where that orchestration.
Well, at the minimum, it says that no matter whose MPU, there should be a DirectX ML that understands it.
Yeah, because you want to abstract it at that level. You don't want apps to have to write to specific.
Do I have this process do it this way? If I have that process do it that way. But that's what DirectX was for GPUs. So maybe DirectML is that for NPUs.
Exactly.
But you're going a step further and talking about an overall orchestrator.
Literally, because if someone said to you, "What was the point of Windows in the beginning?" and they would say GUI, and it's like, yes, but it's also this thing. This abstract.
What a GUI really did was abstract the drivers for all the ways you interacted with the machine.
Exactly right.
And now there's the vice versa. They'd also abstracted how the code was run. I mean, that's where DLL hell comes from. It would load chunks into memory that multiple apps could use.
There are examples of technologies that undercut that benefit of the Windows GUI. So, for example, you have AMD with Radeon, and you have NVIDIA graphics, and they both have their own solutions for anti-screen tearing, upscaling, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yep, that's cute. We get it. And we understand the need. But realistically, this should be happening at the operating system.
It sounds a little bit like the containerization of everything. In a container, Kubernetes is the orchestrator. You're saying Copilot should be the orchestrator.
Perhaps.
My concern is that it sounds also a little bit like Electron, where, hey, just bundle Windows with every single app you've got.
Well,
that you don't want, right?
We're going to get to the 10x container thing in a moment, because that actually came up this week, and I was, again, so many parallels with the past at the show. It's very strange. But I think the theme there is AI is making it possible to do the things we've been talking about, but failed at before, you know? Anyway, to this,
like Windows on ARM.
yes. 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 I mean, what's the
How does
primary
AI
benefit?
help Windows on ARM? I don't understand that.
Because of the MPU. So the Achilles heel of Windows on ARM is basically compatibility and to date performance, but most of the code written to this platform is written to x86, not to your platform.
Right.
So what's your little shining star here for 6 months? Actually longer, because Intel is not going to match them. Is the power of the MPU. You come into this market from the side. You've got these skills around efficiency and whatever, and that's great. But really, you landed at the same time AI landed, and guess what we need for AI?
Yeah.
We need MPUs.
Yeah.
So it's just good timing. I mean, it's very interesting. Anyway, a lot of the features that they showed off for Copilot PCs have related APIs, functions, whatever. They refer to these things. This is very strange. I read this at first as no code. I'm like, nope, that can't be possible. So you go back and reread it. That's not what it says. They describe it as I'm sorry, I'm going to sneeze. No code effort.
There's code, but somebody else is writing it for you.
Well, like no code effort. I mean, what does that even mean? I guess
that's weird.
I guess it means that the API, the functions you're calling, whatever, are obvious. I don't know what that means. I mean, I don't know. Like, a lot of the Win32 API is incredibly obtuse, right? It's ridiculous, and especially today, like we're so much higher level than that. It's hard to even look at that and understand it. So they don't explain it. I don't know what that means, but no code effort, access to studio effects. Okay. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. So we'll see what that means. To me, because I've been so involved with this notion of what is or will there ever be a native app platform on Windows again, fascinated to see this week Microsoft reveal that their recommendation for creating native apps, and I put that in quotes because I don't think any of this is native, is Windows Presentation Foundation. WPF. The technology that debuted, I guess it was technically 2005 or 6, yeah, with Windows Vista. This is the thing that used to be Apple.
The thing that got booted out of Vista.
It got booted out.
Became .NET 3.
wanted nothing to do with it in Windows 8, and it's just been sitting there on the side. And the issue, as Richard knows better than anybody, there's just a big class of .NET developers who knows this thing and loves it and gets work done, and they've written apps and it works. And there are complexities to it for sure. I've struggled with it, but it's a lot more sophisticated than I think a lot of people realize. So here we are, almost 20 years later. Call it 20 years, right?
Yeah.
It's back, baby, and that's
It
fascinating.
never really went away, but it didn't have a lot of focus.
Part of the problem with it is it hasn't been updated in meaningful ways to address the modern UX capabilities of Windows in recent years, right? And so they're actually doing that work now. I don't know how this is one of the things I've saved a video for. I'm going to watch. Is they're integrating it with WinUI 3, which is the current, I guess we'll call it a user experience framework or user interface framework.
Yep.
So that you can add modern looking UI to an existing app, which is probably the most common scenario here. Or if you think anyone would ever do this, create a new native app, so to speak. Native, again, strong term, but a new Windows only app, maybe is the right way to say it, based on WPF with XAML and WinUI 3. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like a Frankenstein's monster. Of like, so what do you, come on, you're in this world. This is you, like, talk to me.
Well, remember, we've got the Maui wrapper, which is supposed to include them all.
Yeah.
And WPF was sort of a weird cousin in that, but it looks like they're moving WPF more to the center of it.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything that's ever happened like this.
No, I think that the struggle for native client apps is real.
Yeah.
To ask me how many people are still building WinForms apps, man.
Right.
With the new WinForm SDK, which has been modernized for .NET Core.
Right. Yeah, and both these technologies, WinForms and WPF, to me were for a while mostly community supported. And WinForms, I think, still has kind of that vibe, but WPF has moved right back into the center.
Look, Microsoft's not building anything with WinForms anymore.
Yep.
but they are building stuff with WPF. Studio for this day, still built with WPF, right? And then there are some things built in WinUI as well. So the fact that they're pulling those two together, so it says we're concentrating our ability to build native apps on Windows. What'll be interesting to see is what the next generation of Microsoft products support.
I guess in some ways, this is I don't want to say .NET, but I guess the .NET client app version of the Windows App SDK, where it's a way to you have existing apps that you've written in this technology, and you want to update them with the modern features that are available today.
I think they want to consolidate a team, right? One group of people to build a native client technology. And so make sure that the folks who've worked in WinUI, their work moves forward. And the folks who worked in WPF, their work moves forward. And maybe we'll have a unified thing in the end.
There's so much work that has to be done here. It's kind of, they have some basic examples that I think kind of highlight the issue. But when you think about WinForms, one of the big issues moving those apps forward, which they mostly have solved, was the high DPI stuff, right? Those apps had a hard time visually scaling to these massively powerful displays we have. When you think about WPF, the issues are related to things like OS theming, right? This idea that we have dark mode and light mode and different colors, and we have accent colors and so forth. So, you've got this 20-year-old app framework, and it's like, I guess we're going to dust it off and
they've been updating it, but arguably it hit its peak in 2010 with Studio 2010. And it got somewhat improved from there. But Maui's strength is in the mobile. Right,
it's mobile.
It's a new version of Xamarin Forms, and it's good with iOS and Android. It has not done well on the Windows side yet.
No, because
this energy seems to be fixing that.
Yeah, this is an issue we see with Flutter as well. Like they did a bunch of work over a few years to update it for the desktop, and it looks like now with Flutter they're moving forward with more of a web app model. And they're doing WASM and they're doing all that stuff. And I think that's how that's going to go.
And they're up against the same problem. They killed it in the iOS and Android space. So they wanted to get on the desktop space. And it's hard.
It's too optimized for that, that kind of thing. So I think with Maui, there are apps in Windows that you are kind of like mobile apps. Like you could make something like the calculator app very easily with Maui. But when you want to make something like Microsoft Word or, something complex like a graphics package or something, you need that kind of density that you can get with WPF. It's just not optimized, Maui, for that kind of app. And I think there was a little push for a little while to maybe we'll go in that direction.
Yeah.
And I think now it's more like just be true to your school. Kind of, we're gonna focus on the thing. But
whatever native client developers you still have left, you should take care of them because they are outnumbered.
Oh my God.
It is incredibly hard to justify a native app in an enterprise workspace.
Right.
Because web apps we've got web servers. Everybody already has a browser. Security context is set. Updates are automatic. Like there's a lot of reasons you build a web app.
I put aside a bunch of videos from last September, November, Microsoft made about React Native. And I was curious that there wasn't new news here about that. But those videos make it very clear that the future of new desktop app development on Windows is actually web, because the reality is that most mainstream apps don't want to just be on Windows. You want this thing to run everywhere, and those capabilities are actually pretty impressive.
Depends on the team.
It depends on the needs and all that stuff. But there is a huge market of apps that exist out in the world that aren't going anywhere. They're just not leaving. We're never going to get past it. So you want to give them that ability to move forward. So the Windows App SDK addresses that need for UWP, which is now gone, and for desktop apps as well to some degree, like literal Win32 apps. And now we have WinUI being added to WPF and also other modern Windows capabilities. So they're addressing it there. And I guess we'll call that a .NET app. I'm not sure.
We'll see. I don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah. Very interesting to me.
Okay.
I know that one. I beat that one to death. I want to talk about that way more than the team stuff. So Visual Studio 2022 17.10 is here. Big thing there is integrated GitHub Co-pilot, which is amazing. They started first in Visual Studio Code, right? That's been there for a little while. There's also the general availability of Visual Studio Code for education, which I have to say is kind of appealing to me. I'm not a professional programmer looking at this thing. Like they have all these built-in courses for Python and other web languages and so forth. It's free, obviously, Visual Studio Code, but this looks like an awesome little product. Like I'm actually going to play around with this myself. I think this is really cool. So that's out now. Visual Studio 2022 version 17.10 has a bunch of other stuff going on there. They have better support for what is it like WinUI, like a WinUI project. That was always something that was a little screwy, but you can do a .NET app or a C++ app if you want to create a new app in that environment. That's in there and stuff. But GitHub Copilot, obviously, is the big thing there. So that's out. Wonder if we're going to get another major version of Visual Studio. Speaking of that,
that is an excellent question, and I don't know the answer to it.
Yeah,
I mean, we know we're going to get a new version of .NET in November.
Right.
We are due. Last version was 22.
It's been a while. Yeah.
The previous version was 19. So you'd think there'd be a 25.
Yep.
But usually if they're going to have a 25,
you think we would have heard about it.
We would announce it in the fall, by the fall, right?
I agree. There was a bunch of .NET stuff, .NET 9 stuff, especially at the show as well, but
still 6 months out from shipping. So it's pretty
over,
early.
Yeah, it's all over the place. And I think it was .NET Aspire, I believe, is GA. Is that right?
One of the revs of it, yeah. They're moving very fast on Aspire.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff
Data
there.
Power.
Yeah. It's you want to target AI. There's a bunch of stuff in that. They, to the tune of like C# is going to support a tensor data type like that type of thing, right? So Microsoft's going to meet you where you are there, as they always do. So
I just had Mads and Dustin on the show.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah, they're the best.
C#.
The C# gods.
Yeah.
both of them.
So the last thing to me that's very, very interesting, that is one of those, it's going to sound a little esoteric, was with Windows 11 23H2, Microsoft added a bunch of developer features to Windows 11. In fact, they're installed whether you're a developer or not. So you'll see Dev Home on your computer, and it's something most people are like, what is this thing? And it's kind of a dashboard for developers. It's got utilities. It's got a kind of a graphical subset of WinGet where you can go and get like developer tools and kind of automate that. There's the beginnings of it's a YAML-based WinGet based app configuration service, mostly for businesses right now, that I think might be the future of Windows backup. We'll see what happens there. But one of the cooler things was this dev drive feature. And what this let you do was create an REFS, resilient file system based partition on your drive that would run faster than NTFS. And for developers, this is great because you want your, where you're building your code to run on the fastest possible system. So flash forward to now, we're talking about 24H2. There's a bunch of updates to both Dev Home and then also Dev Drive. Right? And the Dev Drive, let me jump right to this. This is crazy. So Dev Drive, apparently there's been an update to RFS. There's an update, like a feature called file system block cloning. This delivers instantaneous file copies and way better performance than even RFS, especially with large files. So in 24H2, when you create an RFS drive, you're going to be able to turn it into this new version of RFS. It's going to be super fast. And I'm actually thinking, you know what? Maybe they're going to fix Files Explorer after all. This is how they do it, right? You never know.
I love your optimism.
I know. They are adding that Git functionality to File Explorer, like I said. So you're looking at a replicated GitHub repository in File Explorer folder view, and you put it into detail mode, and you get those headings for all of this stuff, really, status, commit messages, current branch, et cetera. Yeah, that's cool. Like, I think that stuff's cool. Sudo coming to terminal, right? Yep. This is the ability to elevate one command rather than run an entire line.
Don't run a super user context.
It's weird. I it's unfortunate there wasn't another operating system that was doing this forever and showed why that would be valuable, but we invented it. So here it is in Windows. And then some other stuff related to Dev Home. They're bringing some PowerToy utilities into Dev Home just outside of PowerToys, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, things that devs will use.
Some Windows customization stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But I still think forcing this on everybody is a little controversial, but I don't care. I like this stuff, so it's good for me. But I think for most people, probably doesn't matter. It sits there, no one uses it.
Awesome.
And here we go.
There we go. There we go. You know what that means? If you say "there we go," that's when I appear and say the back of the book coming up, and just
in a burst of sulfur, like Mark. That guy's name. Mark Penn.
There we go. Poof. Actually, before we get to the back of the book, I do want to mention how grateful we are to our Club TWiT members who make this show and all the shows and everything we do possible. Club TWiT is something we started about 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago. But as soon as Lisa realized, advertisers, they're getting a little weird. Like they really want to know more about our audience than we're willing to give them and things like that. So we still have a wonderful bunch of advertisers. We can't charge them as much. Many of them have fled to platforms where they have better information about you and so forth, like Spotify. So we realized, and actually I've always thought this was the better way to do this. We need to get your support. If you like what you hear, if you listen to 1 or 2 shows a week, I think $7 a month is very reasonable. If you listen to 2 shows a week, that's less than $1 a show. And you get so much more than that. You get ad-free versions of all the shows. You get access to the Discord, which is more than just a place to chat about the show that's on the air. It's really a community of Club TWiT members, wonderful people who talk about all kinds of things that are fascinating. You also get, of course, additional material that we don't put out in public. You get the video, for instance, for Paul Thurrott's Hands on Windows. Micah's Hands on Mac, same thing. Untitled Linux Show. Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson. We do events in the club that are club members only. We did a watch party a couple of weeks ago from the Laporte House. We all watched a movie together. That was fun. I made brisket. Couldn't figure out how to send the club members the brisket, but it wasn't very good, so you didn't miss anything. We also have Stacy's book club coming up in about 3 weeks. Well, a month. Let's say a month. Anyway, lots of events, great people, a great hang. We don't have a golf course, but everything else, it's kind of a country club for geeks. And if you're not yet a member, can I invite you personally to join? We'd love to have you. $7 a month. Visit twit.tv/clubtwit. There are also family plans and corporate plans. twit.tv/clubtwit. And we sincerely, from our heart, I thank everybody who has already joined the club, and I welcome you into that esteemed group. I should give Paul a little more time because he's been guilted.
No, I'm good.
He's been guilted into writing his tip of the
cobbling.
week.
Apparently, I've been told I mail it in a bit on this show. So
also the last part of today's keynote was Julia Lewson.
Yeah,
I was surprised to see come
was
out.
David Weston in there?
That wasn't David Weston.
Nobody did get in. No, he wasn't on it.
Don't think so. No, they who was with him was the one of the chief security guys.
I'm not sure.
Where did I put that? I wrote it down. John Lambert.
Okay.
So it was Lewson and Lambert, which it was interesting, talking about the Secure Future Initiative. And, one of the biggest things I noticed when they were talking about it is that they said quite specifically, this represents a culture change in Microsoft.
Oh, boy.
Oh, and the industry.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Right. And they were specifically talking about the developer issue. And they, that they're attacked by Midnight Blizzard, who they called out by name and said, by the way, whenever you hear the word Blizzard, you should think Russia. Because it is about, this is, they were saying pretty deliberately, like, this is not, these are not just hackers, right? These are state actors, and that's their business. They said if the total value of what they're threatening was a country, it'd be the 3rd largest country by GDP in the world.
Wow.
Like, it's big business.
Yep.
And so they did address Midnight Blizzard quite square on and say, like, this was the goal. And so their answer, of course, is no passwords.
Yes.
Because passwords are strings.
That's right.
And developers do bad things with passwords.
Yep.
Secure Future Initiative.
Right.
Anyway, you had a tip.
I have two quick tips. One's related to what you just said. So we forgot to discuss the security stuff that was announced this week. Big security push on Windows 11. If one of the features we didn't discuss for the Copilot Plus PCs, those are all secured core PCs, meaning they all have a Microsoft Pluton security processor in them.
Mm-hmm.
This is something Microsoft had created in tandem with AMD and Intel years ago. It has not really spread anywhere in the industry. Like, they're on Surface PCs, but that's about it. So this is part of the spec. You have to do this. David Weston, who stands with, I would say, Mark Ruzinovich and maybe 1 or 2 other people as being the few left who kind of understand Windows at a very deep level. Back in the day, we had people like Mark Lukowski and Dave Cutler, obviously. But
still there
somehow.
Still there.
But was discussing the importance of all this stuff. So there's a bunch of stuff. So I mentioned this thing. It's called Windows Hello Enhanced Sign-in Security, which is a more secure biometric need, eliminates the need for passwords. This is part of the spec for Copilot Plus PCs. Anyway, there's a whole list of stuff they're doing there. And what my tip, such as it is to download something called the Windows 11 Security Book, which is, they had actually created before the show. In fact, they created it last year, but I believe it's been updated with all this new stuff. And it's just it's an 80-page book about all the different security technologies in Windows 11. And, part of this push, to actually secure Windows. So worth reading. Also worth reading, if you're interested in these new Qualcomm-based Snapdragon X laptops, I mentioned Ryan Trout earlier, and he created a report where he compares, like I said, the Surface laptop to the MacBook M3 and also some other laptops. This is, you can download this for free from his website, which is signal65.com. I put a link to it in the show notes. I think it's about 29 pages long, if I'm not mistaken. I'm surprised I don't still have it up in my browser, but it is. This will answer your questions. This point blank. If you're interested but you're not sure, and how does it actually match up, et cetera, you're going to want to read this paper. It's fantastic.
Well, that was well done, last minute Thurrott. Good job.
I thought we were going to run out of time.
We're over. There's no question. But oddly enough, I blocked this room for an extra hour just in case.
You're smart. Let's do a quick RunAs Radio.
Not my first rodeo.
Yeah, you know what you're doing.
Yeah. This week's RunAs Radio with the schmuck.
That's so
as soon
mean.
as when we made this show, I got to tell you, we were just killing each other. Like, it was very funny.
Fun.
Yeah, it's really a good fun when we get to talk.
I kept waiting to get the shepherd's crook.
Yeah, because we were just fully off the rails. I'm pretty sure I tweeted out about this. It's like, two old guys complaining about Windows. Like, that's right. But what we were really talking about is the fact that the Windows 10 leaving primary support got moved. It was April of 2025. Now it is October of 2025. And that sort of offered up the idea of, is it going to move again? And that's sort of your decision as an administrator right now. Here we are in May.
Right.
You've got you got a little more than a year. Yeah. Well, it's like, do I talk to my CFO about playing per seat extended support? Do I go without support? Or do I start migrating to 11? Because 11 adoption in the enterprise is poor. Right. Although the justification for not adopting it, which for a long time was like group policy didn't work properly. Like, there was some serious issues. Yep. They've essentially been resolved. But admins, they like putting stuff on a shelf and just leaving it there. So it's like, nope, 11's not going to work. Put it away. Although I think we also got to the point where it's like, most enterprises don't do every version of Windows. And it's been very easy lately to go from XP to 7 to 10. Yep. And so your instinct is, I skip 11 and wait for 12.
Exactly.
And so that's basically where we went with the show. Anyway,
nice.
it went a little long because it always goes long when we're talking. But it was a fun conversation.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
No.
RunAs Radio, runasradio.com. Now, Richard, you are in the land of plenty when it comes to whiskey.
I have some of this at home.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in Washington State. There's a few local whiskeys, but that thing I go particularly eccentric for. Though somebody was tormenting me about Woodinville again because I wasn't particularly generous to Woodinville last time around. But I did go dip into American bourbon this time around. I'm going to Eagle Rare. Which these days is owned by the Sazerac distillery, which is Buffalo Trace, right? But the origins of it are amusing to me because it's not an ancient whiskey like these others. It didn't deal with prohibition or anything like that. No, it was invented in 1975 by a fellow by the name of Charles L. Beam. So he was the great nephew of the Jim Beam, and the Beam family shows up everywhere in that area. And in 75, it was a tough time for whiskey. That's the disco era, and the highball was hot, right? It was the Cuba Libre. It was lighter drinks, right? You needed to be able to dance a lot. And whiskey's really suffered. Going through the 80s, you see a lot of distilleries getting mothballed, shut down. The Irish industry shut down a lot, and so did the Scottish. And so at the time, Beam worked for Seagram's at the Four Roses Distillery, although at that time it was called the Old Prentice Distillery. And Seagram's is the one when we talked about Four Roses that kept messing with Four Roses to the point where it had a really bad reputation until Diageo buys them up in 2000 and revises everything. And so it's not called Eagle Rare by accident. It was a competitor to Wild Turkey. And so they deliberately made it 101 proof, 50.5, same as Wild Turkey, and called it Eagle Rare. And I sent a link in the notes there, Leo, if you want to pull that up. I found a copy of the ad from 1979 for how they were selling Eagle Rare, where they used the line, "Carve the turkey, pour the eagle."
That's so not too competitive. Wow.
Yeah, is that a little on the nose?
That's hysterical. That's great.
And of course, Turkey at the time was the most popular bourbon in America, in the world, really. So this, if you did no mistake, this was a targeted product.
Yeah.
And it didn't hardly displace Wild Turkey. And Wild Turkey is still widely consumed.
Yeah.
But the Sazerac acquired Eagle Rare in '89, and we talk about Sazerac Distillery. But at the time, Sazerac was only a liquor distributor. They were based in New Orleans, right? And all those bourbons come down out of Kentucky, down the river to New Orleans. And, there's apocryphal stories like Elijah Craig invented real bourbon because he was in Bourbon County. Right. So that's why that was the name on the side of the barrel. And he had a barn fire that caused his barrels to be charred. And so his corn liquor changed flavor, right? I mean, again, apocryphal, like nobody really knows if any of that is true, but there is a Bourbon County in Kentucky, and arguably that's where the name bourbon comes from. So when Sazerac was starting to grow in the late 80s, as the market was starting to shift again, they started acquiring distilleries that were distressed. And so they acquired the Eagle Rare brand. There was also another brand called Benchmark that was made by Beam as well. They acquired them both. And they, of course, didn't have a distillery. So they made a deal with some other Beam family members, Parker and Craig Beam, who ran the Heavens Hill distillery, which is in Bardstown, south of Louisville. And they were producing from there. Although to distinguish it from the normal stuff that was produced in Bardstown, it's actually labeled as from New Orleans. And if you are into collecting old whiskeys, and I am not, I drink whiskey, I don't collect it, you will find labels from 1989 to 1992 that actually say Eagle Rare made in New Orleans. It's not true. They were made in Bardstown, but was the distinction there. But Sazerac now got into distilleries, and by 1992, they bought the George T. Stagg Distillery, which is in Frankfort, east of Louisville, in a little bit drier, warmer area. And this is what is now known as the Buffalo Trace Distillery. And they relocated the Eagle Rare brand there. They also acquired many others: Weller, E.H. Taylor, Elmer T. Lee, Blanton's, Pappy Van Winkle. Yep. And they standardized their stills. Like, we don't really talk about the stills at Sazerac because it's not a particularly interesting part of the story. They make all these different brands. They pretty much narrowed them down to 3 mash bills. So 3 different grain combinations, always corn first. And then in the case of mash bill 1 and 2, it's some rye. The 1 is a low rye one, below 10%, and then barley. And then the number 2 is about 12 to 15% rye with barley. And then finally, the number 3 is the one with wheat. And so Weller, Pappy Van Winkle use the wheat, where Blanton's and Elmer T use the high rye one, and our Eagle Rare falls into the low rye or mash bill 1 version of the whiskey. The 101, the original, which was started back in 75, was discontinued in 2005 after 30 years. They started making a 90, so 45% typical spirit level. In 2000, Sazerac also produced a thing called the Antique Collection, which is all their high-aged whiskeys. And that was a George T. Stagg at 137 proof, the Sazerac Rye 18-year, the W.L. Weller 128 proof, the Thomas Handy 125 proof, and of course, an Eagle Rare 17. So 17-year, very hard to come by, still at 45%. Bottles I've seen going for more than $1,000.
Yes.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
You want the Eagle Rare experience? Buy the 10. It's $40.
Yep.
And it is a nice bottle of bourbon. Not too spicy. The rye is low on it. 10 years old, so it's got a good age on it. It's got a nice color to it. Infinitely drinkable. Yep. Nothing bad to say about Eagle Rare at all, but it's just one of those many whiskeys that has been drawn into that huge facility at the Buffalo Trace Distillery, but it has a great origin story going down to the other regions of Kentucky.
Very nice. Very nice. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we wrap up our coverage of build.
Thank you, Emma.
And we send
we're excited.
Richard Campbell home and Paul Thurrott home to a wonderful marriage. They are not married. They just like each other an awful lot. Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com, THURRO good.com. He also publishes books, Windows Everywhere, which is more about developers and languages as it applies to Windows history. He also has, of course, the Field Guide to Windows 11, which will be updated constantly to cover all of this new stuff.
I can't wait. Oh, I forgot to tell you.
What?
Remember I had to update like 670 icons because they moved the damn Copilot thing over to one end of the taskbar?
Yeah.
You know one of the things I noticed during that presentation on Monday?
What happened, Paul? What
They
happened?
moved it back.
Oh, no.
You have the old screenshots, didn't you?
It doesn't matter. They moved it back. I think they're just screwing with me now.
They're screwing with you,
going
Paul.
on?
They're screwing with you. Well, support Paul and his work by going to leanpub.com. Poor man. The poor man. Richard Campbell lives at runasradio.com. That's where his two podcasts, .NET Rocks and RunAs Radio, are. And, of course, always filled with great stuff. But RunAs Radio this week especially good. If you want more Windows Weekly, a second dose, in effect, with the two people who are sitting in your living room right now. In fact, it's even better without that Leo guy, I got to say. Thank you.
You should be here with us, man. You would have a good time.
I bet it was fun. I'll be listening and wishing. We will be back, of course, next Wednesday, as we are every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. You can watch us live at youtube.com/twit/live. We stream the live show so that you can watch if you want the freshest version. If you are in the club, of course, you can watch in the Discord and chat in the Discord at the same time. We love it if you do both, frankly. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show available at twit.tv/WW. Paul puts copies on his site too, thurrott.com. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to the video, youtube.com/Windows Weekly Show. And you can subscribe in your favorite podcast client, which is frankly the easiest thing to do and guarantees delivery of the freshest episode every week right to your device. And who wouldn't want that? So are you headed home today, guys, or what's the story?
Tomorrow for me.
Thursday for you, Friday for me.
Oh.
I get to drive back, right?
That's right. Just over the bridge. Or whatever.
Yes, across the border, off the ferry. It's with the border wait, it was about 7 hours coming down.
Oh, you had to wait 7 hours? No,
I had to wait. No, that's also taking the ferry and the drive and stuff. It was an hour at the border. I guess I could have done it in 6.
Yikes.
But you know what I didn't have to do? Go to an airport.
That's nice. And you know what? 2 or 3 hours at each end of the airport. You might as well just drive.
Yeah, no kidding. And then enjoy. And honestly, and I like my car.
We're 90 minutes from the airport, so I mean, you got here in half the time.
No, I have had a friend who intended to fly from Vancouver to Seattle to come to the MVP Summit. So I dropped him off at the airport and then picked him up at SeaTac.
That is a flex, if ever there was one. Paul, you're going back to Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania.
All right. Richard, you're going back to BC?
I'll be home next week, before the insane European run
Crazy
starts.
Summer begins for Richard.
It's going to be June's going to be madness. You will feel for me, I promise.
Yikes. Well, we'll see you both next week right here. See, that's the easy thing. You know where Richard is. Right here every Wednesday.
There you go.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Paul. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, Editor-in-Chief of AdAster Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.